IB Nation, welcome back to the Irish Breakdown Podcast, special edition podcast today. One of the best players in the 2025 class, Nate Roberts, not related to my dude over there, Ryan Roberts. You know who that dude is, but don't worry. You'll see during the show, all Roberts stick together. So there's no doubt about that. But big time 2025 tight end Nate Roberts is going to be making an announcement here shortly on 247 Sports. He's deciding between the heavyweights, Ryan. He's got offers from Notre Dame, Alabama, Georgia. He visited Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State, and Michigan during this most recent period. His brother's a tight end at Baylor. He's made 3 trips to Baylor. Obviously, the in-state Sooners are after him as well. Exactly what you'd expect from one of the nation's best players and best tight ends, Ryan. He's a highly, highly coveted player, and he is going to be making his announcement today.
Yeah, I mean, it's a potential massive one for Notre Dame if they're able to get Nate Roberts in this class. I mean, you already have Davion Dixon, obviously, in the class for Notre Dame, but this is, in my opinion, the best tight end on the board for Notre Dame that they've offered. I
would argue he's the best tight end in the country, Ryan, from what I've seen today. I mean, he's in the conversation without question.
He's definitely in the conversation because this kid is about as gifted of an athlete as you're going to see in the tight end class, but also there's a lot of intangibles behind him, and there's a lot of cool backstory stuff that I hope to be able to share with you all today. So I'm excited for Notre Dame's proposition on this one.
And just to preview things, obviously Nate is a sophomore, rising junior. Yes. He is, as we said, one of the top players in the country. His top 10, including schools we mentioned, plus Auburn, Miami, Wisconsin, Penn State, Oregon, were also schools that he considered. As I mentioned, he had an offer from Alabama. Did a pretty big whirlwind tour this spring, really. I mean, started taking visits back in March and April. He's been to Notre Dame twice. He's been to Oklahoma multiple times. He made it down to Georgia. He made it down to Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. So the family definitely did a good job of getting him out and letting him see the top schools, taking in the schools that he wants to consider. And he decided he's ready to make his decision, and he'll be announcing here shortly on 247 Sports, Ryan. But, you know, it's one of those interesting things where this is really a loaded tight end class. So you had to see, you had to kind of, you're going to find out, like, okay, who do some of these schools really covet? Because it would be very easy to say, well, that guy might be hard to get, so we're going to go after this guy. And, you know, but this was a guy that Notre Dame was one of those schools that really got in on early. Let's see if he's going live now. He is currently going live now, so we're going to pull this one up now, Ryan. Yep. Let me know that you all can hear
it. It's been a lot. It's been a lot of points, but it's really cool to see these coaches come in and watch small town Washington. But it's really been a cool opportunity for me, and it's been a blast. But I found my spot, and I'm ready to shut it down.
Yes, we are excited to find out where you're headed. But first, who would you like to acknowledge before you make your announcement?
Yeah, I want to thank my family and my coaches and everyone, the community of Washington and everyone that's been throughout my process. I want to thank all of them.
All right, Nate, you have the floor. Where will you be playing your college ball?
Thank you all for being here today. I'd like to start by thanking God for this day and this opportunity. I'd like to thank my family, both here and across many states. I would not be where I am today without you. To my inner circle of support and development, I love and appreciate each of you. To Coach Beller and the entire coaching staff here at Washington, thank you for setting the standard and holding us to it. Thank you for the time and love that you poured into each of us, and thank you for the support throughout this process. It has been amazing. To my teammates, I appreciate each of you and love you like brothers. I would not be here today without you. To my hometown of Washington, Oklahoma, and Washington Public Schools, I say thank you. We moved here 3 years ago, and it has been the best decision we ever made. This place and the people are special. I'm proud to be a Washington Warrior. To each university that recruited me, I say thank you. My family and I have had the opportunity to meet many great coaches throughout this process, and I have been honored to get to know each of them. The recruiting process has been amazing, and I am grateful for the many opportunities extended to me and my education and development. From the beginning, I've always believed that God would guide me to my decision. I have now reached that point, and I'm blessed to announce I'm committed to Notre Dame.
All right.
And there you have it, Ryan. Nate Roberts has committed to the University of Notre Dame, Ryan.
That's it, man. It's one obviously that we knew was coming because Notre Dame has done a tremendous job, and we'll get into obviously a lot of the
Well,
backstory of just
well,
how they got here. But
if you want to talk about how we knew it was coming, Ryan, how about instead of us diving into why Nate picked Notre Dame, why don't we let Nate tell everybody why he picked Notre Dame? So let's talk to Mr. Roberts again. Just let me know, everybody, that you can hear it.
now joining the Irish Breakdown podcast, the newest member, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish 2025 class, Mr. Nate Roberts, star tight end out of Washington High School in the state of Oklahoma. We're live here breaking this down, obviously, but wanted to give you all a little bit of insight into Nate's background and a little bit of why this is happening right now. So, Nate, first of all, congratulations. How's it feel to be a part of the program, man, a part of the family?
It's been awesome. I love it. I've always dreamed of being Irish, so now that it's actually happening, it's a blessing.
Well, and let me ask you, because that's funny, because I talked to one of your coaches yesterday who told me, and I didn't know this. You should have told me this earlier, man, but apparently Notre Dame was kind of the favorite school growing up. So is this like just how surreal of a moment is this to be a part of this program for that reason?
Yeah, it really is. It really is. But just growing up in Norman, Oklahoma, I'm supposed to be like a Sooner fan. I grew up a Sooner fan also, but the Irish have always been like a big school that I've looked up to and I've always wanted to go play for them. So it's really awesome to finally have that opportunity to play for them, and I'm really blessed.
Yeah, and so you are just finishing up your sophomore year of high school.
Yes, sir.
You're about to go into junior year, which is obviously a huge one.
Yep.
Why now? I mean, you're getting obviously a lot of great looks. You mentioned some of the Midwest powers that are coming after you. You're seeing some SEC schools come after you. Why is this the right moment to make this decision?
Yeah, so I know I'm still young, but my process has been going on for a couple months now. So I've been able to know what coaches I already like and which coaches I don't like. But after my first visit to Notre Dame, I kind of felt something different than these other schools. Like I kind of felt like that was really my home. But that second trip, I mean, it just blew it out of the park. I mean, I checked all my boxes, and I just felt like there was no need to wait, and I felt like there was really no need to wait and just shoot it and just get it over with. Yeah.
I know that you are one of the first players from your school to get this type of attention, kind of the national perspective, become a national recruit.
Yes, sir.
How has this process been for you as far as navigating it, and how important has the support been around you? You know, the coaches, the players, and your teammates and your parents. Like, how important have they been in this process?
Yeah, it's been really like if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't be able to be here. But me and my parents drove me around almost every single state. They've flown me everywhere, being able to go see these places. The community in Washington has been great. They support me every day. My teammates, they're great. They definitely push me. They definitely love seeing it's pretty cool to see all those coaches in the small town Oklahoma come to see a couple of our players. But yeah, then coaches, they played a big part. Coach Brad, he's probably played one of the bigger parts of my recruitment. He's like sending out all my stuff to these coaches, sending out my film. So I'm really blessed for everyone that's been in my recruiting process.
I'm curious because I know you come from a very athletic family. I believe both your parents played collegiate sports. I know your sister is a D1 volleyball player, or is going to be a D1 volleyball player. And your brother played at North Texas and now is at Baylor playing tight end position as well, Jake. So how has, I guess, your athletic background prepared you for this moment? Is it something where you saw your brother go through it? Like how has that just prepared you being from the family you're from?
Yeah, so it really helps with Jake already going through it. So we kind of had like a vision to keep our eyes on. Like we kind of knew what to look for and what to not look for. So Jake really helped a lot in our recruiting process, just already being through it. But yeah, with the athletic background, my dad, he knows what coaches are real and what coaches aren't real. Mom, she kind of just likes to go and see all these places. She knows what places are good and what places are not. But yeah, Jake has really helped us a lot, especially in this recruiting process. Just our being able to already see my parents already been through it, so it's a big deal.
I know you mentioned going to campus and Notre Dame really blew it out of the water for you. Can I hear what your parents or your family's perspective of was Notre Dame after you visited? Like, did they have the same effect? What was their thoughts on the Irish when they visited with you as well?
Yeah, they absolutely loved it. It was definitely number one on their list too. They right after the visit we left, we definitely had a big talk about definitely considering Notre Dame. This is definitely going to be a number one spot for you. It checks all the boxes for you. But just everything about Notre Dame, the campus, the academics, the coaching staff, the tight end use is just amazing, and I can't get that anywhere else except Notre Dame.
Well, perfect segue, because I wanted to ask about the tight end U, obviously the background of Notre Dame. We just saw Michael Mayer, obviously, was a great All-American tight end. You talk about the history from the Dave Caspers of the world to the Tyler Reiferts to the Brock Wrights, and so many great tight ends in between. How important was that background of how Notre Dame has been able to develop that position and highlight that position as a program?
Yeah, that's a huge deal. Even before Coach Parker was there, they were producing so many tight ends. So I just know, in my recruiting process, the usage of tight end is probably going to be the biggest priority for me. Like, I want a school that's not just 10 and 11 personnel. Like, I want a school that's 11, 12, and 13 personnel. So Notre Dame definitely has that. But their way that they've been sending tight ends to the league is you can't get that anywhere else. But even before Coach Parker, they sent like 12 tight ends to the league. Like, I mean, it's just absurd. But I think me and Coach Parker will definitely be able to put me on that list. So.
Well, and let me ask you about your relationship with Coach Parker, because I think that that's important. So he's a tight ends coach, but he's also the offensive coordinator now for Notre Dame. Describe your relationship with him, Nate. Like, how would you kind of quantify the relationship that you developed with Coach Parker, and how instrumental has he been to helping you make this decision?
Yes, sir. Yeah, me and him definitely have like a little bit of the same personality. We're both very open, very talkative guys, very loving guys. But we've just started our relationship about like a couple months ago, right when he offered me. I feel like I kind of just clicked with him right when I got on the phone with him. But we've really just been staying in touch. We've been staying in touch at least once, like every 3 days. I mean, it's been great. He really shows that he wants me. He really does the most from any other coach. We've gone over film together. We have really just seen the campus together. We kind of just done everything together at Notre Dame. We kind of just talked every a couple times a week. So it's kind of hard to like say that I didn't build the best relationship with him, but I actually it was probably the best relationship that I've ever built with anyone.
I have a very curious question for you, because you're a young man that even before it became apparent that Notre Dame was the top school for you, I loved your film. I thought you were the top tight end in the class for everybody that I have seen so far. I learned recently that you were actually a quarterback pretty recently. Tight end is still pretty new to you. Can you talk to me about how that position has developed now this offseason a little bit? And I mean, because I think people are going to be super excited about the film that you put out in 2022. But obviously, that was your first year playing tight end, so it's only going to get better from here.
Yeah, so I was playing quarterback all through and up until my 8th grade year. And then freshman year, I went to D end my freshman year, and then my spring of sophomore year, I decided to switch over to tight end, and I picked up my first offer my spring camp, so that was awesome. But then it's been great. I mean, I love the switch. I mean, I've always wanted to be a tight end, but I just haven't ever been big enough. But then right when high school hit, I could see myself playing at tight end, and like with my brother playing tight end, I've always wanted to kind of follow into his footsteps. So yeah, I definitely love the tight end position more than a little bit of the other positions, but I definitely get to do it all at the tight end position, which I love. So I'm having a blast with it, and I'm only going to get better next year. So I've learned a lot of new things on these. Yeah, and with these visits, I got to learn new things from coaches. So I think that helps a lot. So this next year, I definitely will do much better than last year.
Well, and I know you mentioned it all obviously sporadically throughout this conversation, but if I had to ask you, can you tell me what Notre Dame's pitch was to you? Like what set them apart as far as what they were able to, I guess, sell as a vision for you? And how unique was it compared to, I guess, some other schools and how they were kind of, trying to obviously get into a good position with you as well?
Yeah, so what Notre Dame did with me, they put me through a game-based simulation. They put me through the locker room, and so in the locker room they have about seven lockers for the tight ends, and on the very end is the starting tight end, and he said that that's where I'll be, and that's a big part for me. And he did the whole game day experience, what they do before they walk down the tunnel, and I mean that's just a big part of me. I got to hit the signs, then run out of the tunnel, and then see the whole stadium. It was a night. It was a colder night, rainy, so it was kind of even cooler. It had all the lights on and all the music. It was really awesome. So that was kind of my selling point. They really showed me. They really did that for me and showed me that they really want me.
Well, and let me ask the last question for you, Nate, is I know obviously this is a big day for you and your family and the community of Washington, like you already kind of stated here. But so what's the day going to look like? Where are you going to be celebrating? How are you going to be enjoying this great day?
Yeah, so we're gonna go to our high school. We're gonna kind of set up at my high school. Then I'm gonna have a couple of my friends and my coaches and family there, and I'll just announce it. Then we're gonna hang out. Then I think we're gonna go swim tonight. We're gonna have some steaks and just a little bit of food. So we're just gonna have some family time and just celebrate the commitment.
I love it, man. So I really appreciate you for taking a little bit of time today. Again, I know it's super busy for you, but best of luck, congratulations, and welcome to the Notre Dame family, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So that was the interview that Ryan did with his somewhere in the distant relative, I'm sure. That kid, I'll say this, that kid is perfect for Notre Dame. His last name or for Irish Breakdown, his last name is Roberts. His dad's name is Brian. I mean, so it was destined that this was going to happen. Look, this is a big pickup for Notre Dame, Ryan. I remember the first time we popped in his film and we talked about him on the show. I was like, yeah, this guy's a dude. Right, this guy's a dude. I don't know if he's going to be the top tight end in the class, but he's a dude. And then as you watch other tight ends, you're like, yeah, he's a dude. So when you look at it, Ryan, this is a great way to start off the 2025 class. And from the impression I got from him, Ryan, and you talked to him, you've been interviewing him, you've gotten to know him. It doesn't sound like he went into the process looking to make an early decision, nor did Notre Dame try to influence him to make an early decision. It seems like it's just kind of like no one else comes close to Notre Dame is the impression I got. Is that the correct read of how it all went down?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a hectic, obviously, last couple months. Like you said, Brian, he made the Southeastern swing. He made the Midwest swing. He's been to Notre Dame multiple times. He's been to a couple other schools multiple times, been to Oklahoma countless times. And he talked a lot about the interview of people expected him just to stay home. They expected him to stay in Oklahoma or at least close to Oklahoma and do that trajectory. But obviously he grew up a Notre Dame fan. He is a deeply Catholic individual as well, him and his family. So the religious aspects of the conversation are also very important. And he talked about on his last visit, it was just the first visit was fantastic. And then the second visit, he was just what am I looking for? What else am I trying to find here? This is it. So yes, I think that the feeling he got on campus, especially the second time around, that was the separator. It was just, he found everything he was looking for. To use one of his quotes, he checked all the boxes. He found his home, obviously, Notre Dame. And some guys just know at different times, obviously, right? Some guys don't know until the signing day of their senior year. Some guys know when they're sophomores in high school. I think he did his due diligence, though. This wasn't an impulse of, I took one great visit. I'm excited. Now I'm going to go do my business. He's been to a lot of places and been to some places multiple times, which I think this was a good process for him.
And he came back. That's the thing.
Yes.
When I was doing this, Ryan, I was getting ready to talk. I wasn't speed up. Come on, Ryan, wrap it up. No, he came back. I mean, he cycled through again to see if that second visit had the same impact as the first visit. And I think that was smart and wise. And it's kind of like, what the recruiting process is going to be. Because as you've said, Ryan, he's gone through this before with his older brother who ended up at North
Yes.
Texas. Now he's transferred to Baylor. I think he had 25, 26 catches last year for almost 300 yards, quality player. Just talking to his dad. And the one thing that I can share from that conversation is he said that Nate's are as big as his brother is now. He's about 6'4 plus 230. There's probably a little bit of growth. And I'll be honest with you, Ryan, I expected his game to be completely different when I first saw a picture of him and saw where he was from, but he's a very intriguing player. It's a big pickup for Notre Dame. As you said, I think it was important that it wasn't a rushed decision. It wasn't a sped up decision. There was no pressure on Notre Dame. I mean, there's a ton of great tight ends on the board. So there was no need to try to push him for any kind of panic move in this class. So let's talk a little bit about the class impact, Ryan. And obviously, tight end, it's minimum one a year, so you meet the numbers need. I think the other part of it is Notre Dame the last couple years in 22 and 20 or 23 and 24, in my opinion, has landed players that are good football players that were good pickups. I'm glad they got Cooper Flanagan. I'm glad they got Jack Larson. But those were more filling stylistic needs, in my opinion. You had that great class with Eli Raridan and Holden Stace, and I felt that Notre Dame felt that there was a need for different types on their roster. They needed a traditional tight end. Cooper Flanagan comes in as Mitchell Evans is going into his junior year, so there's a nice gap there. Jack Larson brings you sort of that H-back type of guy that can line up in block nines, block down on sevens, can work the wing, can move, can line up in the slot. Right now, that's role that's really being served by Davis Sherwood, who, and then you look forward to say, okay, but now it's time to get back to landing big-time tight ends. Because I think sometimes people think you just land a big-time tight end every year. Well, okay, maybe, but if the big-time tight ends are just bringing you the same dude every year, sometimes you got to say, look, we've already got some really talented guys. We need this style. I think spacing it out to where now 2025 was the year because of, A, just the way the classes have broken down, and then B, how loaded it is at tight end. It was an important year to just go out and get the best dude that you can get. You've met your needs for stylistic things the last two classes. Now it's just go get a dude, and they flat out got a dude in the 25 class in Nate Roberts.
Well, they did. And I think that, again, it's with the background of everything, it was also a fit that made complete sense, right? Like Notre Dame, I don't want to say lucked out because obviously there was a lot of suitors for Nate. I mean, you mentioned the offer list that he had, and you mentioned the visits that he's gone on, but it helps that he's a Catholic kid that's loved Notre Dame growing up. Like those things obviously help the cause. Jared Parker, though, I mean, Nate literally mentioned it. He's messaging him. I mean, he's talking to him like every 3 days or so, and he's putting in that work. And he talked a lot about that. Jared Parker had built the best relationship of any coach, and not of any coach on Notre Dame, like of any coach in college football.
He emphasized that twice, Ryan. I thought he said it, and then like maybe he didn't feel that he said it with enough oomph, so he came back and did it again. Ryan, I think this is an angle to this too, Ryan, that's important because Jared Parker's been kind of quiet on the recruiting trail from the standpoint of, he inherited a tight end in the class that he arrived in Cooper Flanagan. Yeah. They built a strong bond. He liked Cooper. There was no need to look anywhere else. That was a kid that they liked. So it was about keeping him in the class. They got Jack Larson super early in the process a year ago. And so now it's just like, okay, is he just kind of playing the offensive coordinator role? Most of the things that we've heard about Jared Parker have been from other kids playing other positions. You're now seeing him get a chance to start to show his recruiting chops. And I think this is step one of a two-step process that he needs to hit this summer that is going to show that, okay, the big-time tight end recruiting is going to continue at Notre Dame, right? And I think this was a huge step. And the fact that he said this to you in the past, he said it again in this. I talked to somebody else close to the situation who emphasized it. Jared Parker played a huge role. Yes, tight end you and all that helped, but how Jared Parker sold this was big time for Notre Dame being able to not only get this kid, but to get this kid as early as they got him.
Yep. I mean, the timing, I mean, you were sitting here now in the middle of June with 2 commits already in the class. You also got your first offensive commit, obviously, with Davion Dixon already in the class playing defensive tackle. So I truly believe that when all said and done, as long as there's no bias against a Notre Dame recruit here, that we're talking about a top.
Good luck
I
with
think this
that.
is I think this is a top 50 recruit right now. But I think that this kid has 5-star upside. I
Yes.
truly do. Because the cool part about him, a little bit of the backstory, 2022, his sophomore year, was the first year he ever played tight ends in his
Yeah.
life, not just like
Yeah.
in high school, like in his life. He was a quarterback and defensive end, had never played tight end before.
Ryan, that was the most fascinating part of your interview when I was listening to that and I was editing it this morning and getting it ready for the show was because one of the things I talked about, and I got the class impact on him up on our site and it's out on Twitter now. But the thing that I noted in the articles, he's a really fundamentally sound tight end for a sophomore.
Yeah.
So the fact that he hadn't really played that position before floored me. I was like, no way, no way. He's a really good route runner. He's a really good blocker and things. We'll see this when we dive into the film, but that shocked me, which says a lot about this kid. He's just a football player. You know what I mean? And he's obviously a very talented player as well. I want to, we usually do like a what's next at the end.
Yeah.
But I want to kind of talk about that here as part of the class impact, Ryan. And here's an important piece to this. As we have talked with people close to this situation, what we have found out is Notre Dame has made it very aware to Nate Roberts that they are pursuing Carter Nelson very heavily in the 24 class. That is a known fact. That is not new. And the pitch that Notre Dame has had to both of them has been really fascinating because there's a level of consistency to the messaging. And one thing that we found out in kind of digging into this was Notre Dame had a certain pitch to Carter Nelson about how he fits into the offense. And we discussed that. You've discussed that. You've discussed that, I believe, on Tuesday, correct? That was something that you got into.
Yes. Yep.
But that's the exact same thing they told Nate Roberts. And not about how Nate's going to be used, but they told Nate exactly how they plan to use Carter was the exact same way they explained to Carter how they're going to use Carter. And I think that was impactful in this one too, Ryan, because it's kind of like, hey, and we'll show this on the film. Carter Nelson, as we've said, is sort of like a hybrid Kyle Pitts, Tyler Eifert type receiver / tight end. Nate Roberts is a tight end. He is a pure modern tight end. He's the equivalent of what I think a modern tight end should look like, and we'll get into why when we get to that part of the show. But I think that was very important here too, is because they pitched them on how they're using them together, and that plays into what you had mentioned earlier that Nate said to you in the interview was, I'm not looking to go to a school that's going to be using 10 and 11 all the time. Yeah. And if that were the case, you're going to look at Jack Larson and Carter Nelson and Cooper Flanagan and be like, it's a pretty deep depth chart. But he's looking at Notre Dame saying they're going to use 12 and 13 personnel as well, which means if me and that dude are both dudes, we're going to play together, not rotating in. And I think that messaging was very impactful. I'm going to assume this. I don't know this for a fact. I'm going to assume that that's the same message that they're giving to Carter Nelson about how they're going to use Nate Roberts is you guys aren't competing for necessarily one spot. You guys are competing to play together. Right. And I think that's going to be an important pitch. And I think it was important to note that in this breakdown, because I think it's wise when you shoot for a dude, not only did you get the number one tight end, but to have a guy that's going to complement the two you have. And this is a comment I made to somebody yesterday. If they're able to get Carter Nelson, that's an if. That's still work to be done. But if they do, you've got 3 tight ends in 2 years, Ryan, that are literally different type of players. Jack Larson's not like either one of those 2 guys. Carter Nelson's not like either the 2 guys. And Nate Roberts is not like the other 2 guys. That's an important part of being a 13 personnel team. And I think that's what made the 2020 tight end room so good, even though I would have liked to see them throw the ball more to the number 2 and number 3. Brock Wright, Tommy Tremble, and Mike Mayer played a ton together that year. Yep. But they were 3 completely different players. I would argue this group has even more diversity of skill set if they're able to get Carter Nelson than before. And it's important because some people are going to ask, hey, how does this impact Carter Nelson? I think that's why we wanted to talk about it here is the pitch for Notre Dame is, look, you guys aren't competing for you're going to play and you're going to be on the bench. And then when you play, you're on the bench. It's sounding like, hey, fellas, y'all can play together. All 3 of y'all can play together and bring some I mean, you could go 13 personnel, Ryan, empty the backfield, and go and line up with Carter Nelson to the boundary, Nate Roberts in the slot, your one receiver outside, Tobias, Cam Williams, whoever, Isaiah Canyon, whoever, Jack's playing like a wing H-back position. And just like that, you're a legit throwing the ball weapon against a team that's now in 13 personnel defending defense. That's what makes this so intriguing. And that's what also honestly makes getting Nate Roberts important, but really closing this summer off, trying to get Carter Nelson to go with them. That's where Jared Parker can say, okay, I'm gonna throw my weight around now. It's time. I've watched Chancey load up, and Joe's doing his thing. Dylan's rocking and rolling, right? Gino's trying to roll. It's time for me to throw my weight around. This is step one. Getting Nate Roberts is step one. And if you can get Carter Nelson, that's step two. But I also think it's important to talk about it here because of the fact that Nate is such a different type of player than Carter Nelson is very important.
Well, I think the great thing about Nate is that Nate can play a variety of roles. He really can. I mean, he's a traditional guy that can play in line. He can put his hand in the dirt. He could also do the wing stuff. He also, as we will see when we pop on the film, he's spending a lot of time in the slot. He can do that stuff. He can run some RPO stuff. He can be an after catch receiver. There's not really a limitation to the amount of roles that Nate Roberts can run. And when you talk about Carter Nelson, you could say the same about Carter. Carter can do so many different things, but the things he does is not the same as what a Nate Roberts is going to do. Like, he's going to be a boundary receiver, slot receiver. Like, he's going to be more of an outside-oriented type of tight ends. Nate Roberts is a guy that you can work inside and out and can be that type of style of a player. So, yes, you're right. You can use both those guys together, including Jack Larson, into this conversation as well.
Mm-hmm.
Cooper Flanagan into this conversation as well a couple years into the future. And you can use all those guys, not interchangeably, because they're going to do different things, but together, cohesively is the word that you need to look for there.
It's a great word for that, Ryan.
It's a great get, man. It really is. Because I think in a vacuum, you got a top 50 football player, in my opinion, a guy that could potentially be the top tight end in the 2025 class when all is said and done, a guy that buys in, and a player that's he's a rare football player for where he's from as well. I mean, it's just a fascinating backstory, Brian. They play 2A football in the state of Oklahoma, which is a smaller division. Nate is the first player to ever, from his school, from Washington High School, to really be pursued this heavily. They have another tight end that's being pursued by some Power 5 schools as well, but they've never had a guy that's a national recruit. The Georgia's won him. The Notre Dame's won him. The Big 12 schools won him. Like, they've never had this type of kid.
His offer list is Notre Dame, Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Clemson, Penn State, Oregon, Oklahoma. I mean, if you're a tight end, that's where you want to be getting offered by those schools. Yes. I mean, it's impressive.
No doubt about
it. It's really
impressive.
impressive.
He's a really good football player, man. And as you can see by the interview, if you missed it earlier in the show, he's a really good kid as well. So I think this one just kind of fits all the areas that you need.
So Ryan, you ready to dive into a little film, man? I mean, that's a rhetorical question. I know you're always ready to dive into some film, but y'all are going to see a really impressive kid here. Let's get this going here. All right, so you're going to see, Ryan, I think the first thing that people are going to notice about this kid, he's got really good size for his age, and he's already added 10 pounds since then. And so he's got really good size. The second thing you notice, this kid can legitimately run.
Yes.
Like, not run for his size. He can legitimately run.
I think he's a 4.6 athlete as a sophomore in high school. I truly do. I mean, this kid's a seam runner. This is an RPO kid. I mean, the one thing that he highlights in his huddle tape, Brian, is that he had a little over 700 yards. Nearly half of it was after the catch last season. Like, he does a lot after the catch because he's explosive and he's pretty twitched up, man. Like, he can really explode into the open field. So, yes, you are correct. He's a bigger kid. The coach I talked to yesterday said that this was his first year this past year. He saw Nate the first day when he was about to be hired. And he was like, man, that kid's going to be hard to replace next year, huh? To the head coach. And the head coach was like, that kid's a freshman. Like, we got a couple more years of him. So it's just to illustrate the size that this kid has as only a sophomore in high school is pretty awesome, man.
This is part of his game. You see some of this in his game too, Ryan. This is the kind of thing I'm talking about where I'm like, this kid doesn't look like someone that's ever played tight end before. The patience working in that combo block. Now, look, does he need to play with a little bit better base on contact? Does he need to get his hands in there? Sure. but I love the leg drive, but just the feel for what he's looking for. This is a really natural player. You'll see a little bit later where he's going to seal off an edge block in the run game. This might actually be it. Yeah, here we go. Look, there's technical things to improve, but this is a kid that battles in the run game. He takes blocking seriously, which again shocked me when you told me that this was his first year playing tight end. Usually that's something that comes down the road with kids that make position switches, but not for this kid. So yeah, he's a legitimate big time pass catching option. Plus you said, Ryan, what did he have? 33 catches?
33 catches for over 700
11
yards,
of them went for touchdowns.
Yes.
Like that's a really crazy rate. This is one of the most impressive plays on his film, Ryan. Like this is a decent speed out, right? Good vertical. A couple things I like about this kid. He's not a lumbering guy. He doesn't need to build speed. He gets off the line well. Nice snap in, starts working down, but look how easily he snaps his hips around and makes this catch right. He makes this look way easier than it should have been. This is not this easy of a catch.
Yeah.
Right. Like he makes this like, no problem. I got it. I'm going to get up, turn around, get vertical. This is a hard catch that he makes look really flipping easy. Then he gets flipped and holds on to the football.
Well, I think that's the great thing about him, Brian, is that there is some technical stuff that he needs to work on, obviously, but you see the developments before your eyes because first year playing, I was told by his coach that, yes, he's incredibly talented. He's gifted. The coach told me that he thinks that he could have played major college football playing quarterback if he would have stuck at quarterback, and he could have played major college baseball as well. Like he's a legitimate baseball pitcher, like very good pitcher. But obviously he's growing into this tight end. But the thing is that yes, he's incredibly athletic. He's incredibly twitched up. But the work ethic that this kid has is something that the coach just illustrated. He said that he would go on visits and he would feel so bad that he would miss a workout or he would miss a lift that he would go on his own time and make that stuff up. And the coaches were like, no, dude, you don't have to do that. He's like, no, coach, I'm not missing any of this work. Like I need to get this work in. So this is a hardworking kid who's also incredibly gifted.
I want to point this to this is when I say football player, Ryan. This is kind of what I'm talking about. What do I always preach about? Get the ball away from the defense. Get in the outside arm. Look at this. He sees that guy and immediately flips it over. You want to tuck a little bit because you want to protect from that guy coming from the other side. But just this feel, and then of course the ability to just run, is really impressive. This kid has a lot of tools he brings to the table. And as you're going to see, like he can play nice stalk block there. He could play outside. You can put him in the boundary in certain looks, like you did Michael Mayer. But where he's going to really be dangerous is working inside the numbers. He's going to be dangerous working in the slot, working from a wing, moving around, being lined up attached with his hand in the dirt. He can do all of that. That's really where his game thrives. But if you need to get in some matchups, we're going to put him outside. Put him outside. This is a really nice feel for the game here, right? Working with, snaps inside, feels that defense and just settles quickly in the hole, waiting for the throw. This is the stuff where I was like, when he said that, I was like, there's no way this kid's only played tight end for a year. No way.
Must be that quarterback background, man. You understand
really
what the soft spots and zones are. I mean,
it really is. Yeah, he's an impressive athlete, Ryan. This is one of the better blocks, but again, this is something he is willing to do. And as he gets older and stronger, he's going to be a really good blocker. That's not a small kid that he's driving off the ball like that.
That's why I was surprised that they play at such a lower level in Oklahoma, because I was like, they're playing against some pretty good sized kids. Like they're not like a bunch of small dudes out there.
Really natural catching ability, Ryan. Like he's got really soft hands. Like it just, this is a smooth catch. He makes these things which are not actually easy catches as you'd think look really easy. And that's when you know you have a big time player, when he makes hard things look natural and easy. And again, folks, this is sophomore film of this kid. So he's a really, really impressive football player, Ryan. Really impressive.
And if this was a 2024 kid that we were talking about, or a 2023 kid, I would still grade this as a top 50 player. Like,
right,
it's in a vacuum.
He barely missed the cutoff for me, Ryan, like with the grade. But that's because he's a sophomore and there's things to work on. And I grade him as so one thing I've done is change my system of grading to where I actually grade you for where I'd expect you to be as of if you were a senior. And then that's how, so that's why for me, a lot of sophomores don't get high grades. I don't give that out very often. CJ Carr was a 4-star as a sophomore and then obviously climbed up to a 5 for me. But I get where you're coming from, Ryan, and I don't disagree at all, because the one thing I do have him now is 5-star upside. And I don't, this, Ryan, I don't give 5-star upside to sophomores very often. It's just not something we do very often. And this kid certainly brings it. Certainly brings it. Really nice snap. Look, just snatches it out of the air. His hands aren't waiting. Just makes it look easy. Boop. Here we go. And then you see the speed.
I sent his highlight tape to a scouting buddy just to get his thoughts, because this guy's a really harsh grader, and he was like, "Yeah, no, a lot to work." He said a couple things he needs to work on, blah blah blah. But he was like incredibly gifted, really fast, all types of stuff. I was like, "Dude, this kid's a sophomore in high school." He's like, "No way, that kid's a sophomore." Like, that's insane.
He's thinking, what, this kid's like about to enroll at Notre Dame or something like that.
He probably thought he was a 2023 kid. Yeah, I didn't even tell him what grade he was in or anything. So yeah, he just graded him as like, this is what he is right now, right? And he's about to go into college, and man, he's good. He's a good player.
Yeah. Look, this is the get off I'm talking about, Ryan. Like, this is really efficient footwork, very slight. Like, you see receivers all the time have those huge dips of the front foot, that false step that I hate. This is a pretty normal false step. It's slight, drives off that front foot, and he gets on that DB in a hurry. And here's the thing. He's not running a go route. Right? Like, this is something that I would preach to my receivers, Ryan. Make everything look like a go route. Now, as they got into their route tree, there was a couple things that we do with slow delays. But, like, when you're outside and you're coming off the line, everything is a go route. And this kid, literally, I'm thinking, okay, he's about to run by this dude. And I don't know what the top end looked like, but he sold go and broke it off, and he makes the catch. Like, that's the stuff that I talk about, Ryan. Like, this kid is really advanced for his feel for the game. But there's still a lot of room for him to grow and improve. And I think that's important, because sometimes when you find sophomores that dominate like this, they're kind of finished products, and that can be a concern. That's not the case for him, to be honest with you. And I'll be honest here, Ryan. Look, we all make first impressions. When I saw that they offered a kid from Oklahoma, and I saw what he looked like, and kind of a bigger head, kind of a thick neck, I'm like, he's going to be a big, like, lumbering, blocking kind of guy, is going to really be a dominant physical kid, probably pretty advanced. When I popped into film, I literally had to look and say, is this the right kid? Because I don't think this is the kid that I'm, and then you're like, yeah, it's the right kid. So he looks like a big tight end, but he doesn't play like that. He plays like a modern tight end. And somebody asked for a comp earlier. The only one that I've thought of so far is, he just reminds me a ton of Travis Kelce. Not as the Kansas City Chiefs version. I'm talking about the guy at Cincinnati, the college guy version of it, where can block, big guy, run, probably not like he's not like Kyle Pitts, and he's not going to run like Kyle Pitts type of 40 time, but he can run, especially when you look at a kid his size. But he can flat out run.
Kelsey ran like 4.62, I think, or something like that.
Yeah,
so Kelsey could run.
Right. And so you look at a guy like that, like, he can run, but he's not running, Kyle Pitts 40 times. And right, because didn't George Kittle run like a low 4.5 as well?
He ran a 4.51, I believe.
Yeah. So he's not that kind of burner, but he's fast. Because if you're running a 4.62 at Travis Kelce size, you're moving. And we've seen him in the NFL. So style of play wise, he reminds me a lot of Travis Kelce. And when you look at Travis Kelce at Cincinnati, Ryan, in Travis Kelce's only year where he really played as was the primary receiver, he averaged 16 yards a catch. He had 45 catches for 722 yards. And so part of this, when you compare Nate to Michael Mayer from a usage standpoint, the thing that you're going to look at and say, hey, from a usage standpoint, this kid reminds me a lot. He'll do a lot of the things that Michael Mayer did, the short to intermediate stuff. But he's going to be a guy that averages a lot more yards per catch wise, because he's going to be able. One of the things I wish Notre Dame would have done more in recent years was use Michael Mayer more to stretch the seams, to stretch the middle of the field. I think Mayer could have done it in the intermediate to starting to get into that deeper range and kind of that level between the safeties and the linebackers. If you don't use this kid to attack the middle, the seams, then you're just not coaching football the right way, in my opinion. And then as we saw some of the concepts that Notre Dame implemented this spring, Ryan, with the deep end cuts from the tight ends, with some of the double post looks and different concepts with the overs and things, I think this kid's going to fit in really well to how Jared Parker wants to use the tight end position moving forward. And that only adds to the importance of this pickup for me.
And he's a winner, man. The intangible side of things. He's a state champion in football, and he's a 2-time state champion in baseball. And he's a really good baseball player. And his team went 17-0 this year in football, man.
They played 17 games.
Yep, go check Max Prep. So it's
Good
17-0 this
Lord.
year.
I wonder if that was Max Prep counting like some scrimmage or something, because that's a
It
lot
could
of
have been.
games.
I just looked at the schedule, but
That's
yeah, it could have been.
crazy.
But yeah,
But
17
still,
to
I mean,
0, man.
that's impressive, man. That's really impressive. So I think you all got a sense, Ryan, people got a sense of why you and I are so high on this kid and why we've been so high on this kid for a long time. This kid has a lot of ability. He's an athletic kid. He's a smart football player. I think that's very important. He's a kid that brings intangibles to the trait, the background, the DNA to the trait. You said his mom and dad were both athletes. His sister's getting ready to go play Division I volleyball, I believe you
Yes.
said. His brother's already
Correct.
Division I tight end.
Yep.
So the DNA is there as well. There's just a lot to like about this young man, and huge pickup for Notre Dame, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's like this is one of those pickups, honestly, where it's just like, what's not to like here,
Right.
It's just like tight ends at a school that produces tight ends as well as anybody. A young man that is physically advanced for his age, a young man that is well spoken, a Catholic kid as well. I mean, it's just. What's the drawback to a Nate
Right.
Roberts, right? Like he's just he talked about checking the boxes as far as trying to find the school for him. He checks the boxes as far as like, if I'm a recruiter, it's like, what else do you want?
Right.
There's nothing else that you need in this conversation. He's
Yeah.
fast, he's athletic, he's big, he's a willing blocker. Upside is through the roof. I really think this kid could be special.
Agree. And as you said, Ryan, still a lot to work on with his game. It just, not that he's not, I mean, he's an advanced route runner, ... for his age. There's still things to work on. There's still growth to be had. There's still run game technical aspects to improve upon. But the fact that he's this good this early, I mean, look, like you said, Ryan, if he's not a top 50 player when it's all said and done, I'll be shocked. I mean, I'll be really shocked because like, on my grading system, he was only like 3 or 4 points away. That's on a scale of over 600 points. You know what I mean? So 600, 700 points. So that's really close to being that 5-star upside kid, lots of room to grow. And it also is going to impact the class, Ryan, because when you can kick a class off with highly regarded players, that's important too. We rank him that high. Some don't rank him quite as high, but most have him ranked pretty high. Rivals or 247 Sports and ESPN both rank him as the number 3 tight end in the country. Now we'll see if 247 keeps him there, as you mentioned, with the things that they tend to do. Rivals has him at 160 overall, but still is the number 5 tight end in the loaded class. And I watched the tight ends ahead of him. There aren't 4 tight ends better than him. On 3 is the only one that has him ranked low, and they haven't, but they have him at 249. His composite ranking is 121, 137. He should be higher than that. And I think if they're fair and honest, he will end up higher than that as more people get to know him. Because as you said, this is his first year playing tight end, so he's still just kind of getting on people's radar. So
and he's a small kid. He's a small school kid from the state of Oklahoma as well.
Right.
You remember when Carter Nelson was really lowly rated, right, to begin the process?
Yep.
This
Now
kid's
look
already
at
in a much better spot. So yes, I think it's only up from here if the people that are doing the rankings are fair. If they're fair,
Right.
I think there's only up from here.
Right. You look at the ranking part but his rankings are still such, Ryan, that it's going to catch other recruits' attention, right? It's going to catch a quarterback's attention, a receiver's attention. And I think those are very important aspects of this entire conversation. I think the other thing too, Ryan, is if you're CJ Carr right now, you've got to, and Kenny Minchie, you've got to be looking at the 24 and 25 classes and just be licking your chops for all the pass game weapons. I mean, and it's not even just the receivers. I mean, they've signed 4 receivers, have commitments from 3 more. If you talk about Cooper Flanagan, you talk about Jack Larson, you talk about Jeremiah Love, you talk about Aeneas Williams, all legitimate pass game weapons. And now you throw this kid into the mix, and you're just like, whoever's a quarterback for Notre Dame, it's like, dude, I don't know what else we can do for you. We're doing everything we can to load up.
Get Taylor Taylor in the 2024
That's
5
right.
class, and then I guess we're cooking there. Yeah.
They get Taylor Taylor and Nate Roberts, then they will have landed their number 1 pass catcher at tight end and wide receiver for this class, which would be huge. So really big pickup here, Ryan. We're going to have a mailbag next, so some people have thrown some questions in there. If you do have some questions about Nate, about recruiting, about whatever the case may be, about the team, you know how mailbags work, go ahead and get those in there now. Ryan, what's kind of next for him? If you're Nate Roberts' coach, what are the things that you're going to sit down with him and say, okay, this is what we're focusing on this summer to get ready for next season. This is where we can take your game as a junior to that next level.
Well, I think that it's a physical development offseason, right? Like we usually see a big jump from sophomores to junior years as far as, being able to add to his frame. And I think that it's just the attention to detail is basically what you are. He's a special athlete. He's a kid that can run. He's a kid that catches the ball very easily in the pass game. It's about run game proficiency. We see there's plays and there's tools there to be a very good blocker and to be a very good blocker moving forward. But let's add some weights. Let's improve aiming points. Let's improve, ability to create movement on first contact. Let's improve the feet running on contact. Let's improve the hand usage in the run game. Like those things I think are generally big bumps that happen from sophomore to junior year. And I think that that's just really attention to detail stuff, aiming points, hand usage, all those critical aspects of playing the position. I think that as he continues to get bigger and stronger, he becomes a good player in some of those areas, but could potentially become a plus player in those areas. So I think it's just the attention to detail this offseason, really.
And here's my warning to him. If I'm evaluating him, if I'm his trainer, if I'm his coach, we got to make sure that you don't focus too much on getting big. That's my concern with kids built like him is you can focus too much on the lifting and too much on those things, and you lose some of that agility. You lose some of that loose hips, that ability to flip your hips around, catch that ball, and keep spinning around. That's the kind of thing where say, hey, look, you're a naturally big kid. You don't need to look like Michael Mayer in a year. You know what I mean? Like, keep that looseness, keep that explosiveness, refine. Because, like, honestly, Ryan, if he's 230 now and he only gains 10 or 15 pounds between now and the time he goes to the National Football League, 15, 20 at the most, he's going to be plenty big enough to play tight end at the next level, right? So it's about, hey, get stronger, develop yourself as you physically mature, but don't feel the need to become this massive Hulk-looking dude, right? And that's going to be my big thing to him is your explosiveness, your agility, your loose hips, your body control, all those things are truly what make you a special player. Right? God gifted you with that, and God gifted you with a great frame. You don't need to worry about, like, if he was like 210, you'd be like, I'd be a little concerned. If he was like 205 sophomore, I'd be a little concerned because I'm like, he's going to have to put on 20, 30 pounds before he gets to Notre Dame.
Yeah.
And then you were like, okay, is he going to get too tight? Is he going to lose some explosiveness? He's already got the weight. It's refine it, let it grow naturally. Like if he's the same weight when he arrives at Notre Dame that he is now, because I was told he's a little over 230, I'm okay with that. I'm totally okay with that. Let Matt Bayless put that stuff on the right way. Right. And so that would be my only sort of heads up. Hey, look, work on like you said, work on all the things you just talked about, Ryan. And then there will be natural strength through normal strength conditioning and stuff like that. But just don't feel this need to become like this big monster at tight end, right? Yeah. And then lose that. That would be my key. So big pickup, Ryan, huge pickup for Notre Dame. Great way to add on to the 25 class. We were kind of wondering when they were going to get another 25 player, and we were kind of going through and thinking about who the next guys were. And Nate Roberts was always a guy that I remember when he first visited Notre Dame or first got offered by Notre Dame, I was talking to somebody who covers Oklahoma, or maybe you were, I forget who it was. And they were like, yeah, Oklahoma coaches are super worried about this kid. And it's kind of interesting. That's about when Oklahoma backed off of him, because I think there was a feeling like right away, like Notre Dame's going to be hard to beat for this kid. And not because, oh, look what they do with tight ends, but there was something about this kid. And after listening to your interview, and he talks about, like, I've always been an Irish fan. It's like, okay, they had to know that. And that's why they're saving face a little bit. You know what I mean? Which is a smart recruiting strategy.
It is, but I just always love when schools, cool on a kid or back off. Most of the time it's not by their own accord. But
yeah. But I mean, I'd do that if I was a coach. It's smart. Sure. It's perception matters in recruiting. But there was always a thought that this Notre Dame is going to be hard to beat for this kid, and they were. So now it's about, okay, now you go make yourself better and be a leader of this class. Just keep doing what you're doing, keep improving. Big pickup for Notre Dame. Now it's going to get interesting, Ryan, because now Jared Parker can focus all his attention on Carter Nelson and figuring out who the number 2 tight end the best fit at tight end in that class might be. And that's going to be a very interesting thing. But I think right now the focus is going to be on, you've got to get Carter Nelson in the class along with this kid. Because if you do, now all of a sudden Notre Dame's back to having, like right now, I think Notre Dame has a very good tight end room. I think they have one of the 5 best tight end rooms in college football, top to bottom. But there's a couple other schools that just have better because their top end talent is better, in my opinion. Would you agree with that? Like, I think Notre Dame depth wise can hang with Georgia. What they can't do is their top dudes aren't as good as Georgia's top dudes right now because of your junior. You lost a guy who's a true junior, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so what you do now is, if you can get Carter Nelson, if you can get Nate Roberts, now you're back to doing that. And then of course I like the spacing out of them with 2 to 3 years apart of Holden Stace and Eli Raridan, which I think is smart as well. So I mean, when this kid shows up, Ryan, those kids are going to be seniors. Isn't that nuts to say? Like they're just finished their freshman year, and we're already talking about Notre Dame getting a commitment for guys that's going to be when they're seniors, going to show up when they're seniors. It is really wild.
Yeah.
So I think
I saw someone tweet about a 2028 kid at the evaluation camp that you went to.
I refuse.
What am I
That's too
doing
creepy.
there?
I'm not tweeting about a middle schooler. I can't do it, man. I can't do it. I can't do it.
Good idea. I think it was Mark Edwards' kid, but like still, it's kind of weird.
Well, yeah. I mean, okay, that's maybe a little bit different, but still, it just seems weird. Just seems weird to me. So Ryan, that's going to do it for this show. We're going to go to the mailbag next, folks. But before we get to the mailbag, let's do us a big solid. You see this right down here, everybody, right? Hit that subscribe button. Like the show. We appreciate that. Hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, share this podcast. If you want to engage with us about the show, leave comments. If you just love the show and you want to let us know you love the show, if you have a question, feel free to ask a question. If you're listening to this, after the show is published, obviously all of you in the chat can certainly ask questions now, but if you're listening to it later, that engagement obviously helps us to continue to be someone that Google is going to recognize. So we would greatly appreciate that as well. And if you have not done so, make sure you subscribe to the Irish Breakdown podcast on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get podcasts. And of course, Ryan, sign up for the boards at irishbreakdown.com. So Mr. Roberts, let's dive into our mailbag. And we have a big super chat from Edwin Hooten. Edwin says, no real question. I just normally contribute one time a month. Edwin, we greatly appreciate that one time a month too, my friend. Really, really do appreciate it. Thank you so much for being on the show with us. Kay Grant, Brian with my favorite shirt. And Ryan, there's no doubt that he is a gap closer type of player.
Oh, yeah.
You could argue that Notre Dame doesn't have a gap to close at tight end. I get that. So maybe he's one of those guys that's maybe a bit of a gap widener. But I do think that once Mayer left, the rooms flipped a little bit for Georgia and Notre Dame. Just being honest. When you look at the current roster compared to Georgia, Notre Dame has a very good tight end roster. It's an experience, and they got to prove themselves, et cetera, et cetera. But just God-given ability, it's a very talented room. If Eli Raridan wasn't injured and didn't have 2 ACL injuries in the course of a 12-month period, I might feel a little different, but that's a legitimate concern. But so I do think that if the gap is being back to being the best tight end room in all of college football, I do think there's a small little gap, and a guy like Nate Roberts and Carter Nelson, a guy like Nate Roberts closes that. And if you get Carter Nelson, it's okay, it's done. You're back on top. So congratulations, you're back on top. And but yeah, I had to rock this shirt today, man. It was funny is because I thought I had some laundry done that I didn't actually get done. So I had a couple. So I was like, I don't know if I have any gap closer shirts yet. But my wife had put some clothes away that I had done. So what I do is when I clean all my, because I have a million IB shirts, Ryan, you know that. Like sometimes I'm like, did you wear the same shirt 3 days in a row? Like, no, it's the same design, but it's 3 different shirts. So when I do them, I hang them up in the laundry room. And so my wife had taken them all and put them in our spare, like our guest room, our reading room, where I hang all my clothes, because of course my wife takes all the closet space in our bedroom. And I was like, oh no, I'm out of shirts. So it's like, oh, thank God she hung them up. So I was able to find in the closet a gap closer shirt, because today is definitely one of those days, Ryan. I mean, forget the fact of the position and all those type of things. This is the kind of kid you look at and say, this is the needle moving type of pickup that just overall talent of the roster get you closer and closer and closer to the Georgias, the Bamas, and the teams like that. There's no doubt.
And I think that he's a contender to be the top tight end in the 2025 class. So, I mean, is there more definition of a gap closer than that? I mean, we're talking about potentially getting the best player out of position in the country. Like, I think that the Nate Roberts is that type of talent. So, yes, agree. He is a gap closer in a vacuum in the entirety of what the roster is right now, because losing Michael Mayer is a big blow, obviously. Like, everybody knows that. He's one of the best, if not the best tight end to ever play at the University of Notre Dame. He's in that conversation. So losing him is a big attrition to that room, a big loss, obviously. So continuing to bolster it with talent of Nate Roberts' caliber, potentially of Carter Nelson's caliber, if they're able to close, it matters. And it matters a lot moving forward here.
And just so people know, we're not dropping hints about Carter Nelson. We're not like he's committed and they need to close on him. They have not done so yet.
Notre Dame, Georgia battle. Yeah.
Right. They did a great job during the official visit. There's still closing to be done. So I don't want you guys to think that we're trying to drop hints like, oh, Carter's definitely coming to Notre Dame.
No.
I think Notre Dame did a great job during the visit, but there's closing to be done there. And there's an angle to sell there. So I just want to make sure, because sometimes, we'll drop some hints. We're not going to take a kid's moment, but if you've been watching our show long enough, you start to pick up on things. That's not what we're doing with Carter Nelson right now. It's genuinely saying that's how important he is to really just solidifying this tight end room and really taking your offensive recruiting to that final level. And this kid, obviously, Nate Roberts is a big part of that. We have another super chat, Ryan, that I think is kind of touches on what we talked about earlier, but let's dive into more specifics here. And this is from Rob Osgood. He says, guys, if he selects Notre Dame, how would you use Nate Roberts in your offense? Obviously, he did pick Notre Dame. Rob, thank you for the super chat. Rob got that in before the show started. But now that he's in the class, Ryan, and we talked a little bit how you move him around, specifically from attacking the defense standpoint. We did the formational stuff, outside slot and all that, getting into a little bit of how you would use him in the pass game once he finally gets to Notre Dame. So let's break that down, Ryan.
Well, I think he's a little bit of a movable chess piece. This is the kind of guy that I would quantify Rob as he's a matchup dictator, right? Like, he's a guy that I'm going to put in line at times. I'm also going to put at wing at times, motion across, because I want to try to manipulate a defense in order to get the best possible matchup I can. Because I think that a linebacker one-on-one against this kid is just stealing. I mean, I think working against zone coverage just in general, this kid is going to be incredible, because I think he has a really good understanding of where to attack. But I think when you're trying to dictate matchups, you're trying to create one-on-one matchups, right? You're trying to create man-to-man matchups. And linebackers on the second level are very few are going to be able to match 6'4 plus, 4'6 something in the 40-yard dash with the body control that he has in the passing game. So I'm trying to dictate those matchups on the second level. And then there also is going to be times where maybe I line up in a certain formation and I motion him out to play in the slot, because that will also get me a one-on-one matchup, potentially with the safety, potentially with the linebacker, but possibly with a safety or a nickel as well. So I really think that this kid is a matchup dictator no matter where you put him on the field. But I really think that the versatility he has is the guy that I want to move around. So I really want to create matchups with motion, with trading, with different formations. So he's a tight end. He's a true inline guy, but he's also a guy that can do a variety of things. He's a matchup dictator.
I think you nailed that, Ryan. I think you have to be able to say we're going to have to – if his game continues to progress the way that it does, he's a guy that a lot like Michael Mayer, differently, but just as far as philosophically, you have to know where he is all the times. You have to have an answer for him. And when you can have a tight end, we saw this. I think Georgia did this very well. Notre Dame would have done this with a better quarterback this last year. But we saw it in 2021, I feel, where when you have a tight end that forces teams to say, we got to have an answer for him on every play, it puts you into some really tough spots at the receiver position. And it allowed Georgia's receivers to maybe make more plays than their talent would otherwise dictate as often as they did. I think we saw this in 2021 as well, Ryan, where, Kevin Austin was getting one-on-ones all day against teams because you couldn't take care of him. You had to worry about Michael Mayer. It left Braden Lindsey later in the season when he started to break out. It's why you started to see you had some big plays out of the backfield, with Kyron, and you think of the wheel route to Chris Tyree because you're focused on where Michael Mayer is all the time. Deion Colsey coming into a game and catching a 30-yard post route because their 3 guys ran with Michael Mayer and the inside just opens wide up for the post route. So I think that we would have seen that more this year, Ryan. And I think if a coach will sit down with a tight end, he'll show him, hey, look at how these guys were open if you're a receivers coach. Because of how teams focus on Michael Mayer, you want to make sure you continue that moving forward. And guys like Nate Roberts bring that type of ability to where, especially Ryan, and look, it's great to have a tight end that can line up outside like Tyler Eifert did and Kyle Pitts did. But I'm not going to lie, for me personally, I like having that as an option, but I need to have a tight end that I can line up in the slot, in a wing, attached, and say, you have to account for him, because what that does is, from a pass game standpoint, it forces you to condense your alignments and be focused here. And if you're focused here, you can't be as locked in out there. And if you're recruiting the kind of talent, the big play talent, like the Braylon Jameses, the Cam Williamses, the Isaiah Canyons, the guys that are true vertical players, that second too long staying here means that post route's now getting over top of your head. And those are the things that a tight end like this can bring to the table, where he's making an impact even if he's not getting the ball. That's the one thing I wish we could have seen more of with having Michael Mayer here. It's not Michael Mayer's fault. It's not necessarily the receiver's fault either. Receiver position was a problem at times last year, got way better by the end of the year, but just the way the offense was being run, it never allowed it. But that's the kind of impact that this guy can bring. We saw that with Tyler Eifert in 2012. I mean, Tyler Eifert's numbers in 2012 when he won the Mackey Award weren't nearly as good as his numbers in 2011. Well, why was that? Well, in 2011, teams weren't focused on Tyler Eifert. They were trying to figure out, how the heck do we stop Michael Floyd, who had 100 catches that year, right? And so it was a bit of a reverse. So Tyler Eifert goes out and has 63 catches for 803 yards. But then you look at him in 2012 and he had 50 catches for 685 yards. But you're like, the impact he had on the game, though, was huge, because teams had to defend him, and that's why TJ went out and had a big jump in production. DeVaris Daniels was able to have a really good first year back. Theo Riddick was able to make a lot of plays out of the backfield because had 36 catches that year, because teams were focused on trying to stop Tyler Eifert. And this kid has that ability. So man, you just love it. You get excited. I'm starting to get excited because I'm an offensive coach, and I'm starting thinking about like what I can do with a tight end that can do the things that this kid can do. You start getting pretty fired up, man. There's no doubt about it. I want to address something else real quick here, Ryan. Bass and Domer said, did Nate Roberts silently commit? If so, when? Not really. So anytime a kid commits, but he's going to announce it another time, I guess that's technically a silent commitment. But I don't view that as a silent commitment. It's, I've committed to you, and now I just got to announce how I'm going to do it. It wasn't like a silent commitment. To me is more of I'm going to silently commit to you, but I'm still doing this, or I have some other things I need to figure out, or I'm going to take some more visits. I don't view this as a silent commitment. He announced for the Notre Dame staff recently, and then it was just about, okay, how do I announce it? And they just, he decided to do it on 247 Sports. So I guess you could call that a silent commitment. I don't view it as such. Once he made his decision, recruiting was over for him. And I think that to me is more of a true, that's just a commitment.
Yeah.
Not, and the
Especially
silent commitment is different. Yeah.
Especially in today's world where everything needs to be announced. So.
Right. So it's kind of funny. It's like how it's changed. I remember it was a 2011 class, Ryan. I'm just sitting down at the table and I'm going through all my list of guys, and I just call up DeVaris Daniels, and I'm just like, hey man, what's going on? How you doing? He's like, oh, hey, he's like, yeah, I just got a phone with Coach so-and-so. I just committed Notre Dame. I was like, wait a minute, what? He's like, yeah, I just committed Notre Dame. I was like, can I report that? He said, yeah, sure, go ahead. So it's just like no thought of getting on Twitter. I don't even know, was Twitter even a thing back then? This is back in 2010. Was it even a thing back then?
I don't think so.
So it's just like, so you would actually you would back then would break commitments. Now you don't really do that because, the kids are going to do it on some social media or announcement. And I'm fine with that. I mean, it's their moment. Right. And so I do think it is kind of cool for them to be able to do that. Although it does take away our ability to kind of show that we're on top of things and breaking stories and all that kind of stuff. But this has been done for about a week, Ryan.
Yeah.
About a week, I believe.
Yep.
And Yeah, it's so I just wanted to address that real quick. We have another super chat from Charlie Weiss's last about loop. Thank you, Charlie. He says, isn't it crazy how much better the offensive recruiting has been since Freeman took over? I hope defense starts catching up. Please get Carter, Jared Parker. That is the funny thing, right?
Recruiting was very good early, though. It was very good early, but yeah.
Well, since Marcus Freeman's become head coach, it's not been as good as the offense. I don't think that.
I mean, initially it was though, because you had Peyton Bowen and
but
Keon Keeley. And
Keon was already committed. Here's my point: like Keon, some of those guys were already committed. Like Keon was already committed. Brendan Vernon was already committed. Drake Bowen was already committed. So like some of your best players in last year's class were already committed. And my point is, it's not that they haven't done a good job defensively recruiting, but remember where the offensive class was when Marcus Freeman took over. So that's partly it too. You already had some guys committed. I think that some people, I said this yesterday, I think there's some overreactions to the defensive class. It's got to get better. It's got to finish strong. There's one position for sure I'm freaking out a little bit about. There's another position I'm concerned, but let's see how you finish with Justin Scott. But I think the thing is the offensive recruiting has taken a huge jump. And I don't even look at that as an insult to the defense. I think it just shows what you can do at Notre Dame when you have hardworking, quality recruiting coaches at almost every spot.
Yep.
And you don't even have a good product to sell yet, Ryan. That's the crazy thing about it. You don't have a good offense to put on the field. Say, hey, guys, look what we did at such and such. Tight ends you kind of do with your recent history. But you are not signing – you did not sign last year's freshman class. And you do not have commitments from Cam Williams, Isaiah Canyon, and Micah Gilbert because they watched your offense in 2022 and said, I want to play in that. You know what I mean? And that's the really impressive part about it. You could say maybe running back, right? You know, tight end for sure, O-line, but like the skill positions, they're buying into Notre Dame. And that's what kind of gets you excited because this is what you and I have always believed, Ryan, and I've been trumpeting long time. Recruiting at Notre Dame is hard. It is. I've never said that. But it's not nearly as hard as that previous coaching staffs have made it out to be. Charlie Weiss showed that. And then Marcus Freeman's offensive staff is showing that. And then Marcus Freeman showed that as the defensive coordinator, right? I mean, in a very short period of time, completely changed around the fortunes of the defense on the defensive side of the ball. So you can do it if you hire the right people. And that's always been the thing. And I started thinking about, man, if they put a good product on the field this year, what is the rest of the you just started your class off with Nate Roberts. If they put a good product on the field, Ryan, what's this offensive class going to look like? You got to get kind of fired up about that.
Yeah. I mean, it's got great potential. Obviously, it tangibly needs to work because 2025 is not going to just work off of promises and upside, right? It's
right.
You tangibly have to see some results now, which will be big for this fall.
You can get away with it if you're Jared Parker to a degree because you haven't called a game yet, to your point. But once the 2023 season is over, that's gone. You are now what you showed on the field.
Yep.
And I'm actually that's something I'm excited about, in my opinion. Jordan Schreiber says, thank you for the question, Jordan. So will Jack Larson play a Tommy Trumbull-like role?
As far as where you align him on the field, yeah, to a degree. I mean, Tommy spent a whole lot of time as a wing. He spent some time even as fullback. I don't know if Jack's a guy that you're going to play fullback all the time, but I mean, he's going to play wing a little bit. He's going to play out in the slot. So there are some similar-ish things, but it's not a direct one-to-one for me, Jordan.
I think there's a lot of similarities into how they're using the run game. Because the thing with Tommy Trumbull is Jack is not as powerful as Tommy is right now, but I think Jack is going to end up being a really good blocker. But you have to use him correctly. You have to let him get leverage. You have to let him get some movement at times. And that's why I like the wing, letting him be. He's going to be really – where I think Jack could have an impact too is Ryan is, being a guy that comes back on split zone, coming to the backside on split zone, lining up – not so much a fullback, but get him moving into motion and then just let him immediately, boom, kick out or seal that edge player. I think he's going to be pretty good at that early on. And as he gets stronger and stronger and stronger, I love the effort he shows in the run game. He just has to get stronger. And that was kind of how Tommy was as a young player as well. So I think how they're used in the run game could be similar from an alignment standpoint once Jack gets stronger. Where I think they're different is in the pass game. Tommy was a fast, vertical player that didn't have great hands. Jack is a really good route runner with arguably the best ball skills of any tight end in the 2024 class. He doesn't have the athleticism and the size of the Carter Nelsons and the Jaden Riddells and the guys like that. But as far as just pure God-given catching ability and high pointing the football and being able to make plays and while absorbing contact, being held, whatever, his fault. I mean, some of the catches he makes, Ryan, where there's literally like a hand up in his face, and he just kind of looks through it and reaches his hand around and makes the catch. Like, I mean, it's just it's really impressive. He's going to be in college a guy that you is just going to love on third down, Ryan.
Yes.
Like, oh, he caught 7-yard pass, guys. Yeah, but it was 3rd and 6, and he just got open and made the play. That's where I think Jack Larson's not getting appreciated enough. No, he's not Michael Mayer. He's not Tyler Eifert. He's not a guy that's going to run, a bunch of go routes on the outside. But that's a kid that's going to make a lot of money plays if he gets a chance to work into the rotation because he's a really good route runner, and his ball skills are outstanding. And that's going to be something that you can play with. I mean, we saw that for Michael Mayer this year, Ryan. How many times did Michael Mayer make catches when he was covered? Right. And Jack will do it on different type of routes in a different way, but that's what he projects to be able to do. And that's what I like about him and why I think he's getting slept on a little bit by some Notre Dame fans, in my opinion.
Yep. Just a little bit.
Right.
I agree. Sorry.
No, keep going.
Oh, no, that's all. Just a little bit was all I was going to say. Yep.
Here's a super chat from Nathan Milton, Ryan. I'm not sure since you were on paternity leave if you were able to stay to find out anything new at Deuce, but Nathan wants to know if there's any update on Deuce Knight.
Not as much, Nathan. I mean, this is one of those situations where Deuce has been pretty adamant that he wants to make a decision sometime over the next few weeks. But I think that we'll see if that gets slowed down, if that stays on trajectory or not. Notre Dame's still in a good spot. I still think that they are up in the top of the list with Tennessee, Ole Miss, Notre Dame. Like, I still think that is the top 3 for Deuce Knight. It's just about clearly defining the timeline as far as getting a full understanding of, well, when is that date exactly, Deuce, and when is the kind of the cutoff for making your final pitch? Because I think Notre Dame's in a good spot with Deuce, but you are battling obviously a couple SEC schools, and for a kid that is a Southern kid playing obviously in the state of Mississippi. So that's where you kind of are at the moment.
Andre Tunsil says, do you remember how Stanford used their tight ends about 7 years ago? The pass concepts are great, but not fast. Notre Dame tight ends are fast and athletic. They're certainly trending in that direction. That's certainly true. I think Holden Stace runs very well. Eli Raridan is fast. I think Nate Roberts has that. That's also partly why Carter Nelson's important too, Ryan, because I think he adds a big burst of speed to your offense. Cooper Flanagan's more of a traditional tight end. I think Jack Larson's, as I mentioned, is more of a short to intermediate type of guy, more of a volume pass catcher type of player. But yeah, these Carter Nelson would be a guy that adds a lot of that. Eli Raridan has that. Holden Stace runs pretty well, and of course Nate Roberts does that as well. I do want to bring this up, Ryan, and get your take on it. I am very curious to see if Jared Parker expands how the tight ends are used in this offense, because I do think there have been times in the past. We saw this with Stanford to a degree, although they didn't always. They would have multiple tight ends make plays, but other than like 2012 with Ertz and Tololo, they didn't always have 2 tight ends making a bunch of plays. You had Fleener and Ertz in 2011, 2010, but 7 years ago was not that time. They would play a lot of guys. But I think when you go back and look at the end of the Harbaugh era and then the first year or 2 of the Shaw era, their ability to get production from multiple tight ends, and we're now seeing Georgia doing that at tight end. I think that's something for me that's been missing at Notre Dame that I would like to see be added to that, where you're able to go in, and I don't need your number 2 tight end to catch 30 balls. I'm not necessarily saying that, but to where if let's just say Mitchell Evans is your number 1, you need teams to be able to either have to account for your number 2, whether it's Holden Stace or Eli Raridan or down the road with Cooper Flanagan, Jack Larson, Nate Roberts, Carter Nelson, whoever. You need them to have to be aware of your number 2 tight end, or if they're not, you need to make them pay for not paying attention to it. And I feel like that's been something that Notre Dame has just been kind of giving away and not utilizing for too long, and I'd love to see that change. here in moving forward under Jared Parker. What are your
I
thoughts
mean,
on that, Ryan?
it's a strength that Notre Dame has on the roster as far as always having quality depth at tight end. So it's an easy one, right? Like, I mean, I think that for me, it's you can create so many mismatches with the tight end personnel you have, especially because they're all incredibly different. They're not guys that all going to fit into the same cloth, into the same box. They're guys that can be very versatile with how you use them. So yes, I think that there are opportunities, especially in the passing game, where you can have multiple tight end looks and be able to really take advantage of one-on-one matchups. And you now have guys that athletically will be able to win one-on-one just about whenever you need them to. You know, you're going to have guys coming in, the Jack Larsons and the Nate Roberts and maybe Carter Nelsons, and those guys will be able to take advantage of one-on-one matchups in most situations. And that's a key attribute you have. But regardless, that is a thing that Notre Dame should always live off of is the ability to use multiple tight ends, because that is a strength that they always have. And you need to steer into the strength. Notre Dame's never going to have a problem recruiting the tight end position. They should never have problems.
Unless they have a coach that needs to be fired. Right. I mean, right. I mean, the only way that they have a problem recruiting tight end is if they have a coach who shouldn't be at Notre Dame anymore. I mean, that's really what it boils down to. Or you can't get a tight end in a year because you just signed 3 phenomenal tight end classes in a row. I mean, but yes, to your point, and it's not, here's the thing, Ryan, that you hit on that I think is smart. And I want to clarify what I think you mean. You can correct me if it's not looking at this particular roster and saying, boy, you've got to know what you can recruit and build your offense around present and future and say, we are a school that can recruit this position consistently and this position consistently. So whatever we do to create our offense, we have to make sure that these things are focal points. And then if we happen to go out and get a lot of success at running back, if we happen to have a lot of success at receiver and these other positions, that's going to make us unstoppable. But our offense has to be able to utilize this to a high degree because we can recruit this at a high level. And I think that they've done that at tight end with the number 1 guy and then the number 2 and 3 guys in the run game, but not carrying that over into the pass game has been a limiting thing for Notre Dame. And so I'm glad to hear that you and I are on the same page on that. Absolutely. Yeah. Raymond Eves says, where does Notre Dame stand with 2025 recruit Dorian Brew?
They put in a lot of great work with Dorian early, so I think they're in a good spot with him, Raymond. I think that the one thing that is going to be interesting to watch is that Ohio State was a little late to offer Dorian, but obviously he's an Ohio kid and there is a deep understanding of Buckeyes. So if you ask me today who are Dorian's top 2 schools, I would say it's Notre Dame and Ohio State. Those are the 2 schools for me. So Notre Dame has put themselves in a good battle here. Obviously, you need to go into the state of Ohio and beat an Ohio kid for, that Ohio State is now pushing for. But Notre Dame has done a lot of great work early on, obviously, in this situation. So I think Notre Dame has positioned themselves probably as the top two school for Dorian Brew right now between Notre Dame and Ohio State.
It's just about staying consistent. I think the only question with Dorian Brew right now is where do you want to play him?
Yeah.
I could see him being a receiver. I could see him being a big corner like Cam Hart. I could see him being a safety. And that's one of the things I love about him, Ryan, is the fact that he brings so much for depending on what he wants to play. I would be one to recruit him for 3 different positions, 2 on defense and 1 on offense. And I love kids like that because he may want to recruit him. Let's just say hypothetically, and I don't know the answer to this, Ryan, you'd probably know better than me. I think he right now prefers defense, right?
Yeah.
So you recruit him for corner right now. And he decides he commits to, and he decides in a year, man, I want to play receiver. All right, cool. Let's go. You know what I mean? Like, hey, coach, I'm 215 now. I want to play safety. All right, cool. Let's do it. I mean, he's that kind of guy, Ryan, where he literally, to me, projects as a Notre Dame caliber player at 3 positions. And when you have a kid like that, you got to get him. You got to go get guys like that. And he's one of my favorite recruits in 2025. Absolutely one of my favorite recruits. And that's a big part of it right there is that versatility. Guys like that are rare. They're even more rare when they're 2.5 hours away from you, Right. And so, I know it's in state, but you got to try your best to beat the Buckeyes for that one. It'd be a nice, very, very nice poll. Here's one from Sam Hartman, 10 for Heisman. Who are the candidates for the next 25 commit? Ryan, we We talked about this a little bit yesterday, just kind of rehash some of the guys that I wouldn't say, let's not say necessarily the next to commit, but who do we think is the next crop of guys that Notre Dame is in the best position with?
Yeah, best position for obviously Nate was a part of that conversation on Friday, but now we're done with there. I think that if Notre Dame takes a second tight end, I think they're in a good spot with James Flanagan. I think they're in a good spot with Owen Strebig at offensive line. I also believe that they are in a pretty good spot with a couple defensive players, CJ May. I think that defensive back wise, they're in a really good spot with Creed Thomas out of Brophy Prep out obviously in Arizona, the same high school as Benjamin Morrison. So Creed Thomas, I think a couple of the Chicago edges you're in a good spot with early on. Christopher Burgess of the world, CJ May, Owen Strebig, I think you're in a really good spot with him as it currently stands. And it's just about obviously closing for a lot of those guys because you put yourself in some really good situations early on in this class, and you really need to continue to obviously push. James Flanagan, Justin Thurman at running back, some guys that Notre Dame is, Deuce Knight that we just mentioned. Like, you're in a good spot with a few of those guys.
Did you mention Rowan Byrne?
I did not. No.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned him yesterday. That's why I'm just trying to remember when a kid tells you that's his dream offer, that's a pretty good one. I think yesterday you also mentioned Anthony Sacca is a guy that Notre Dame's doing a good job with. Penn State's going to be tough there. His dad played quarterback at Penn State, but there's an Al Golden connection there. So they're doing really well in 25, Ryan. I don't want to load up too fast in 25, but normally I'd say, man, I don't really want more than 5 or 6 commits in the sophomore class until they're done with their junior years. That's normally where I'm at. This 25 class is a little different, Ryan, because it's such a talented class. There's kids, like you mentioned, the Nate Roberts one is a perfect example. There's the fear that, well, what if this kid doesn't get any better?
Yeah.
Well, okay, fine. Like if all Nate Roberts does the next 2 years is just get stronger, like you said, that's still a top 100 football player. And you even said, I think, top 50 football player.
I did.
But he's still easily a top 100 football player. And so that's there's just a lot of guys like that, right? Like that they're a little advanced, but they're just so talented that you're like, man, like, how can I not take this guy right now? Like, how can you not take this player? So it's a unique situation for Notre Dame to be in. It really is. But they're almost done with 24, which is really what's helped putting them in a position where even though there's going to still work to be done in 24, Ryan, I mean, most of the guys that they've had more 25 kids visit in June than 24 kids.
Oh, yeah.
Which is wild.
Yeah.
And definitely different than where it used to be. But they're really grinding in the 25 class, man, in a good way. Got ICO5 says, there is a lot of excitement this season. Do you think teams are a little nervous about what Notre Dame could be this year? Yes. Yeah. Ryan, you and I have talked about this before. Teams know what happens if Notre Dame goes out and wins big. They know. Why do you think that teams gang up on Notre Dame so much when Notre Dame's in it with the big boys for a recruit? Ryan, you've learned this, I believe, during your brief time covering recruiting, and you'll learn it even more, and I've learned this over the years. I have seen Florida and Florida State gang up on Notre Dame knowing that they may lose him to their rival. But they would rather lose a kid to their rival than a kid go from Florida up to Notre Dame and thrive.
Yeah.
Because they know those things will start opening up pipelines if Notre Dame wins. If Notre Dame competes for a championship and kids realize I can go to the NFL, I can play for a championship, and I can get that degree, we keep telling y'all there's a lot more kids out there that care about that than you think. People have been spinning this BS for a long time. Just top players don't want to get educated. No, top players don't want to go to a school with crap facilities and a history of losing, which is basically what Notre Dame was for a long time, and a coaching staff that doesn't work and doesn't do all those type of things. Those were Notre Dame coaching problems, not you can't recruit kid problems. And I've always pushed back on that. And every time that Notre Dame has shown success in the field or had a head coach and a coaching staff that worked in recruiting, they've recruited very well. And Charlie Weiss had 2 top 5 caliber classes in a row with coming off of a 3-9 season. And so I've always felt that. And I think teams are very concerned about that. They know that it's a problem if Notre Dame goes out there and wins, that it's going to make it very hard to negatively recruit against Notre Dame. And especially if those wins include victory, especially if that winning record in the playoff and stuff like that includes win over the big boys. And that's the one thing lacking. Notre Dame has won a lot of games in recent years, but they don't have the big game wins. They don't have the ACC title game win over Clemson. They got whooped that game. They got whooped by Clemson in 2018. They got whooped by Alabama in 2020 in the big games. They beat LSU twice, but those were in years where LSU wasn't a vintage LSU football team. And so I think those are areas where if Notre Dame can kind of knock down that big door, teams know there's going to be trouble. There's going to be trouble because Notre Dame is a unique animal, and that's the last thing that they want to happen. And that's been something that I've experienced and known for a very long time. Joe Medina asks, how many tight ends is Notre Dame shooting for in the 24 and 25 class? Obviously, they're looking for a second tight end in 24 if it's Carter Nelson. I don't know, honestly, Joe. I don't have clarity right now on who they're going to get at tight end in 25 other than Nate Roberts. If they're going to take a second, I'm not saying they will. I'm not saying they won't. I'm saying I don't have clarity on that right now. And so I don't want to speak to that. I do know that sorry, real quick. I have a little bit of a emergency. So yeah, do what you got to do, Ryan. So I do think that there's an issue. If you look at it, I think a lot depends on, do you get Carter Nelson? Then it's a no-brainer. You take a second tight end. What I don't know is, will they take a second tight end if they get Nelson? I don't know. And again, please be clear. I'm not saying I doubt that they do. I'm saying I literally don't know. I have literally not gotten feedback on that answer. I probably would. Two reasons why I personally would, Joe. Number one, it's a loaded tight end class. How do you say no to like James Flanagan and some of these guys that are in the class? It's like, man, these guys are too good to let them go somewhere that we might have to be playing against them. Number one. Number two, just the realities of the modern transfer portal are such that you can't guarantee, even at a place like Notre Dame, that your roster is going to be in the next couple of years what it is right now at that position. And so, especially when you're talking about a current sophomore class, for me, I really would have to look into a situation where I'd say, hey, we're going to load up here. We're absolutely going to load up here and really try to build around that. All right, let's get to some more questions here. So Ryan has to go. Just so you guys know, there was a little bit of a family emergency, so please keep Ryan in your prayers as he heads back to that. So I'm gonna work through some of these questions that I have here now, but I'm probably not gonna be able to add a whole lot of new questions to that outside of Super Chats because it's just they're on different pages and things like that. So Vanilla Chill asked about 25 quarterbacks. I'll tell you what, that's something I'm still trying to get an answer on. I do like where Notre Dame is at right now with 25 quarterbacks as far as where they are with Deuce Knight. Here's my stance on Deuce. I think Notre Dame is in a great position with Deuce. I think Deuce loves Notre Dame. Me personally, I just have a little bit of a fear of are you really going to get a kid from Mississippi? So I'm a little bit in the I'll believe it when I see it mode kind of thing, but I do think he likes Notre Dame a lot. Bear Bachmeier, Carter Smith is another guy. For me, I would not rush into taking another quarterback if you don't get Deuce. I don't feel the need to panic and get a guy this early. It's a deep quarterback class. I'd say let things fill out, and I'd still keep recruiting. If he's a guy that you love, if him and KJ Lacey and guys like that are guys that you love, be willing to stay on them. You don't need another quarterback right now. And so I would say, hey, maybe wait and get through the season, see how certain guys progress, and then go from there. Let's get to a couple more here real quick. Irish Trending says, could you give your confidence for landing each player 1 to 10 on Kingston Viliama Asa? Well, I'll tell you what, coming into the visit, I'm at like a 6. I think that Ohio State is a great position there. I think USC absolutely did a phenomenal job with him on their visit last weekend. They went from not being really a major player to they're going to be a major player now. But this is Notre Dame's chance, and I really feel like deep down there's just something about Notre Dame that Kingston loves. The question is will it be enough to get him to kind of turn down the football aspects of some other schools and come to Notre Dame? This is their shot. We'll have a much better feel for it after this weekend, but this is their shot. If they're coming out of this weekend tied with like Ohio State, for example, and he goes to Ohio State next weekend, I'll get nervous. If you come out of this sucker with the lead, it's a lot easier to hold on to that than it is to do the opposite. So I'm at 5 or 6 with him. Justin Scott, I said yesterday, I'm actually at a 7, surprisingly confident. Now, I also think he may commit somewhere else. It would not shock me if he commits to Miami this weekend, or in the next couple of weeks commits to Miami. Wouldn't shock me at all. Notre Dame's not giving up on him. I just feel like he's going to stay in the North. I do. And so, with that being said, I think Notre Dame would be the northern school that would get him if that were to happen. It's not going to be easy, and I'm not. I mean, 7 is the highest I'm willing to go, but I like where they're at there. Bradley Shaw, Irish trending. I'm going to give you a TBD on that one, because with Bradley Shaw, it depends on what happens with Kingston. If you get Kingston, I think you're done at linebacker. I don't know that you take a 4th linebacker. If you don't get Kingston, then my opinion on Bradley Shaw goes way up. I'd be curious to know if they would maybe take 4. That's something I'd be very curious about, honestly, is when you look at your current depth chart, you only have 2 guys left from the year before. Yeah, I mean, I'd consider taking a 4th. I would. I really would. Part of it would depend on where you are last year. But here's the thing about Bradley Shaw that makes this one tough. I don't know if you all have watched his film or not, but he's a really good football player. He's just not really big. He moves well. He runs well. Here's if I could say like, he's built like a safety or a rover, but he plays like a Mike and a Will. And you have to ask yourself, like, is that really where you want to go? But I think he's a really good football player, and I'd be okay if they took him and still got Kingston. I really would, because I think it would help solidify the numbers of the depth chart. I could live with that. And you never know, like I said, what's going to happen with your current roster. You never really know that. So I would be okay doing that. I really would. But just, Bradley Shaw is one of those kids that you've seen Notre Dame take before. That he's a J.D. Bertrand. He's a Jack Kaiser type, where he doesn't necessarily have the body of a big-time linebacker, but, man, his film is impressive, and he runs well. So we'll see. I'd personally, like I said, I'd be okay with that. I love his film. I just question the body. Like, and here's what that means. So just to understand from an evaluation standpoint, you can love a kid's film and say, but I don't know if he can do that at the next level because of limitation A or B or C. So for him, it's not really an athletic limitation. It's more of is he big enough? Like, I've heard people compare him to Tavon Coney, and Tavon Coney was like maybe like 205, 210 as a sophomore. But by the time Tavon got to Notre Dame, he was 230. And I don't know if Bradley Shaw can get to 230 that quickly and carry it the way Tavon did. If Matt Bayless thinks he can, I'd go for him. Because, again, he's a good linebacker. The film is impressive. It's just that size. That's my only question. It's my only concern with him. Berkshire Yank says material impact on Marshall Pritchett. I'm going to answer this one with similar to what I did earlier. I just don't know where they are right now with a second tight end. So without knowing what they want to do, I can't say how it impacts Flanagan or Pritchett or anybody else. So what I'll promise you is once I do get clarity on that, we'll talk about it and look at kind of, okay, here's what they do next. Here's the tight ends that they would look at. Here's why. Or hey, they're moving on to next year. Once I get the answer to that, I'll let y'all know. Let's get to some more questions here, folks. Bill Tunnell. Been a while since we got someone from out of Oklahoma. Who's the staff's recruiter for the region? They don't necessarily have a regional coach there per se. Like, Dylan McCullough was out in Oklahoma this spring going to see Xavier Robinson. Jared Parker was out there. They don't have as much of the regional recruiting like they used to. If I had to guess based on who visited like in January and like some of the early visit periods, I would say probably Dylan McCullough, based on him getting out and checking out some of the schools in that region, would be my guess. And to Bill's point, I actually looked this up yesterday. I believe I'm correct on this. And if somebody else knows that I'm incorrect, please point it out in the chat and I'll correct the record. But Matt Romine in the 07 class, offensive lineman from Tulsa, was the last offensive player, the last player that Notre Dame got out of Oklahoma. So it's been a while. Now, Notre Dame's had some players at Oklahoma now. If you all remember, if you're my age and you grew up watching the 87, 88, 89, 90, 90, 91, 92 teams, there were two guys named Tony Brooks and Reggie Brooks that were also Tulsa guys. They were from Booker T. Washington High School. So they were both Oklahoma guys. And, of course, Reggie had a phenomenal 1992 season, is still a great ambassador of Notre Dame. So those are they've had some success, not a lot, not a I'm not going to see if Lou Emoji wrote an article of this. See, best Notre Dame players from Oklahoma. If somebody wrote about it, it would have been Lou. Lou would have some on that if there is something. So I'll see if I can find something like that. But yeah, it was it's been a while. It's certainly been a while for that one. David Lowe says, Brian, off topic, but do y'all think CJ Carr will rise or drop after Elite 11? I honestly, David, don't have a clue. I don't know what the ranking services are going to do, and to be honest with you, I don't care. Number one, if CJ went out and was the number one quarterback at the Elite 11, I would sit here and tell you I don't think that should matter a ton. He's not going to show you anything there that you haven't seen on film, and if you see something there that you don't see on film, that's a problem, and that's true of all quarterbacks. I'm a big fan of looking at what a guy does on film. And there's certain things you can look at these events, but these are pro days. I don't really care a whole lot. It's cool. It's fun. It's good to talk about, but I just don't get worked up about, who won it, who did. I care more about the perception of the win and what it would do for recruiting than I do what it means. If, CJ Carr is all of a sudden better than I thought, or he's worse than I thought, or anything like that. I just don't really care, to be honest with you. So what are they going to do with this ranking? That I don't know. If they were honest, like if On3's honest, and I don't know what Charles Powers' deal is, CJ Carr. I don't know if CJ said something about his mother. I don't have a clue. It's weird how he can watch CJ Carr and rank him lower than everybody else, significantly lower, even people that don't like Notre Dame. You have to get to the point where you almost say there's some sort of issue there with him and CJ Carr. I don't know what it is, but there's some issue there. I don't know how else to explain it. I really don't. I mean, I'm talking to people that I know football, and they're like, he ripped it up here and he did this and he did that. And then you read this guy's evaluation and he's like, just so you know that CJ Carr took 2 sacks. And it's like, that's all your whole takeaway from his 7-on-7 where he did what he did was he took 2 sacks or would have taken 2 sacks. It almost comes across as personal now. And that's not where you want to be as an evaluator. And I've said this, I don't think Charles Powers, who's the primary ranker of On3, I don't think he has a Notre Dame bias at all. I don't. I've said this before. There's several Notre Dame kids that are ranked higher on On3 than anywhere else, and sometimes by a mile. When Charles Jagasaw was a 5-star on On3, Sullivan Absher was ranked higher there than anywhere else. Keedron Young and Isaiah Canyon, who are 3 stars by most other people, are both top 100 guys on On3. It's the thing with CJ is there's something there with him and CJ, and I don't know what it is. I really don't. It's bizarre, it's weird, and it's incredibly wrong and misguided. So I couldn't tell you what it is. I don't know the dude. And I appreciate the hard work it takes for like one guy basically to pump out rankings, and you're going to get some wrong. But he's got some issues there with CJ Carr that I just think are bizarre. And I really don't know what it is. But if he wants to have credibility, he needs to get over that. I don't care what you think about a player personally. You need to be able to evaluate fairly and honestly. And yeah. And the other thing is, if you're going to raise someone's ranking up to a 5-star based on something they did in pads or without pads on, I also would say you're putting too much emphasis on events like this. And that includes people like us. Like if I had CJ as a top 100 guy and he went out and won Elite 11 and I bumped him up to a 5-star, you guys should be like, why are you doing this? Last I checked, there's no pads on, there's no pass rush, there's nothing like that. What are you doing? And you'd be correct in doing so. All right, Basson Domer asks, Mike, best guess on how many more Notre Dame commits by the end of June? Public commits, I think we'll see at least 2 more. I think 2 is what I'll say confidently right now, public commits. Yeah, 2 more public commits. Irish Mills 540, how does Nate Roberts compare to Michael Mayer as far as a recruit, raw skills, potential, etc.? I don't know what Mayer's ranking was at this point in time. They're different players. Mayer was always more about physicality and being big. He was a quality athlete. He doesn't have the speed that Nate Roberts brings to the table. Michael was also very advanced. Michael was one of the most advanced tight ends I've ever seen. I mean, as a junior in high school, he could have played college football. I mean, he was just a physical monster for a long time. If you all remember that followed his recruitment, he was an all-state middle linebacker as a junior and then moved to defensive end as a senior and was an all-state defensive end as a senior. So he was a big physical kid. Nate is not as strong as Michael was. He's quicker and faster than Michael was. So they're a little bit different players, but I think how you use them in certain areas is going to be very similar, especially from an alignment standpoint. That's the thing that I had said to somebody yesterday is how you use Michael as far as the positions on the field. Those are going to be very similar to how you use Nate Roberts. I think the route packages are going to be a little bit different. There's going to be some carryover, but there's some things that Michael did that you're just like, I'm not asking Nate Roberts to do that based on what he is right now. And then there's things that you're going to, if Nate Roberts continues to be what he is now, that you're going to ask him to do that you didn't ask, you weren't going to ask Michael to do, or at least to the degree. So that's kind of where I'm at on that one. Good question. The history expert asks, will there be a bold prediction hot take show as we get closer to the season? Because I've got a few already. Yeah, we will. That'll be part of our prediction show as it'll be kind of deeper into fall camp as we get probably like a couple weeks before the season starts. We'll get into we'll do our season prediction, go through the schedule, do all that stuff, predict the record, predict MVPs, all that stuff. And we'll have some bold predictions and hot takes and things like that around then. So yeah, that'll definitely be something that we do. The history expert also asks, if Justin Scott continues on into the fall, uncommitted, does Notre Dame's chances increase? Absolutely, in my opinion. Absolutely. We've got a question here. Could Notre Dame have a balanced offense like Georgia with an emphasis on consistent quarterback play and play calling for Jared Parker? Certainly, it's possible. I mean, they've got a very good quarterback. I would rather have Sam Hartman than Stetson Bennett personally, just individually. Talent around him might be different. That's just my opinion for a host of reasons. I think Notre Dame's got a running back room that's talented. They've got a receiving core that's talented. They've got a talented tight end room. They've got a talented offensive line. The question now is, right now, Notre Dame's a lot about potential. The receivers have potential. The guards have potential. The running backs after Audric have potential. The tight ends have potential. What you don't want to be using a lot of, and when you're describing a team, especially when you get in the season, you don't want to be using the word potential, because potential means you haven't achieved it yet. So this team has the potential to be really good, but why are you saying potential? Because they haven't been so yet. And that's how it is right now. So are they able having a balanced offense? Yes. The thing I like about Georgia is they were a balanced offense. They were a very efficient offense, but from their efficiency, you created big play opportunities. So the fact that they could just stay in front of the chains, just constantly in front of the chains, allowed them to then say, hey, we're getting in these really good second down situations and getting into good field position, so we can take some of these shots where if we go incomplete, it's 3rd and 2. We trust our run game to be able to go move the chain still. We've got tight ends. We get the ball to on 3rd down, so we can take more chances. Notre Dame hasn't been a very efficient offense to where, you get into a first down situation where you throw an incomplete pass, you're really getting behind the sticks, and now you're in trouble. And I think that's where you're going to see them, I think, be a lot better this year if some of these younger guys can go out there and really start to step up and turn that potential into production. That's going to be the key. The more of those guys with potential, the Deion Colesies, the Tobias Merriweathers, the Chris Tyrees, the Jaden Greathouses, Braylon James, Rico Flores, Mitchell Evans, Eli Raridan, Holden Stace, Jadarian Price, Jeremiah Love. I mean, just Billy Schrouth, Rocco Spindler, just go down the line. There's a long list of kids on the Notre Dame offense that have potential. Potential doesn't win you football games. Production does. And once we stop using the word potential for Tobias and Deion and Tyree, that's when this offense takes off. And hopefully we get there. Our next question is from Mark Avalon. Thank you, Mark. He says, has the transfer portal and quarterback recruiting hype system ended what I remember Coach Holt saying, that if a quarterback did not work out or was lost, you brought two freshmen the next cycle? Yeah, it has. I mean, just the way it is now, kids aren't at that position or not. I mean, if you look at the numbers, I don't believe there's any position that has a higher frequency of transfers than quarterback. Kids just don't want to wait anymore. And you're going to have a hard time bringing in 2 quarterbacks and then convincing them to both stay. I mean, you're just what happened with Tua and Mac Jones is rare. It's a very rare thing to happen. And so the portal becomes a necessity. You know, like I hate the portal the way that it's currently constructed. I don't like it. I'd like to see it change. But here's the reality of it, and this is something that we had talked about when it first came in. I hate it because I think it's bad for the game. It's been great for Notre Dame. Could you imagine what Notre Dame's record would have been in 2021 if if there wasn't the rule about grad transfers being able to transfer right away and play right away, and Jack Cohn couldn't come and play right away? Now that was before the whole current portal stuff got crazy, but it used to be where even if you had graduated, if you had any eligibility left, you still had to sit out a year. Could you imagine if that wasn't true for Jack Cohn in 21? That'd have been a rough year. Could you imagine what we'd be looking at this football team right now if there was no Sam Hartman and Thomas Harper and Javonte Jean-Baptiste and Antonio Carter? We'd be a little nervous right now about certain things. But yeah, there's potential, but yeah, Tyler Buckner could be good, but what about the injuries? What about this? What about that? I'd be a lot less fired up about this football team. So I think the transfer portal has been good for Notre Dame. I really do. And yeah, they've lost some guys too, but they've added a lot more than they've lost to the portal. I mean, the only guy that, Buckner and Diggs is about the only guys they really lost that I don't think you really would have preferred not to lose, in my opinion. So it's been a plus, definitely a net plus, significant net plus for Notre Dame so far. Still don't like it, but I think it's impacted the quarterback position the most. You're going to almost have to accept the portal as a reality at quarterback. Now, the question for Notre Dame, Mark, I want to see Notre Dame get to the point where then when they go to the portal, it's to find some kid that's okay coming in as a depth piece. Hey, you're here for protection if Kenny Minchie goes down or if CJ Carr goes down. I think that's what they're going to be looking for just to get your numbers where they need to be. And if you do get a second quarterback, it's going to be some lower ranked kid that's just a program guy that's just gives you numbers and protection and can run your scout team and stuff like that. You're not going to bring in CJ Carr and let's just say Air Noland into a class, or CJ. That's probably a bad example because they're both ranked really high. But you're not going to bring in CJ Carr and a guy ranked like 175th, because the guy ranked 175th is going to be a starter. And if he does come in, okay, fine. But then CJ shows that he's the dude, and then that kid leaves to go somewhere else. Barring that kid being a Notre Dame legacy or a kid that just dreamed of going to Notre Dame his whole life and he's okay not being a starter for 3 years, just doesn't happen anymore. And that's just the reality of where we are. Mitchell Carey said, Mitchell Carey, I just took your question down accidentally. I hit the star instead of the other one. But the question was basically, with Blake Hebert committed somewhere else, what are we thinking about quarterbacks in 25? It's a long list of guys. I don't know what their priorities are. Bear Bachmeier's a guy that I've heard, whose name I've been told. We talked about this in a show about a week or two ago. And I dove into a lot of different names. Carter Smith's another one. Obviously, Deuce is on there. I mean, they're going to keep grinding away on Bryce Underwood and George McIntyre. I don't see either one of those happening. I don't see either one of them having much interest in Notre Dame. The nice thing is it's a really good quarterback class. It really is. I mean, it's early yet, but I've seen a lot of depth at that position, and it's a lot like last year's class, in my opinion, because of that depth. So I just don't think they need to panic. I really don't. Let it play out. Let guys develop. Let guys step up. And if you don't get Deuce Knight, then stay on them for a while. See if you can maybe convince them to go somewhere else. But those are some of the names. Like I said, Carter Smith, Bear Bachmeier, Antoine Hill's a guy they're recruiting. I don't think they have much of a shot there, but they're recruiting him. Maybe they go after a Ryan Montgomery, who's an Ohio kid. I don't know if Ohio State's going to take him or not. There's another kid who I haven't seen from Ohio that Ohio State offered recently, Tavion St. Clair. I haven't watched him. I don't know if he's a good player or not, but he'd be a guy to kind of keep into consideration. I know they went down and saw Luke Nickel, a kid from Georgia, during the spring. He's okay, but I also think that's going to be tough because he's Jack Nickel's little brother, and obviously that recruitment left some hard feelings with some people. So, guys, it's a really good quarterback class, some kids that we don't know about now are going to emerge and break out as juniors. So if I was Notre Dame and I missed on Deuce Knight, I'd just keep recruiting them and then spend some time developing that class. That's pretty much what I would do if I was them. That'd be my advice to them if they cared, and they don't. So we'll see what they will do. Ray Holcraft says, of the three big opponents this season, which in your opinion is the most important to win to raise the perception of the program, and which of the other opponents poses the biggest challenge? I think that's an easy one, honestly. Look, they're all important, right? And you can't beat Ohio State and then get your butt kicked by USC and Clemson and move the needle, right? So you've got to win at least two of those three. Of those three, I think the game that has the biggest impact on where Notre Dame will be how Notre Dame will be perceived is Ohio State, for a couple reasons. Number one, I think Ohio State is considered one of the big boys, right? Like they've won a title in the last 10 years. They won in 2014. They've been in the college football playoff 16. Excuse me, give me a second, folks. I've just had something come in my throat. I apologize. They won it in 14, made the playoff in 16, made the playoff again in 19, made it in 20, made it in 22, took George down to the wire. They're always in the top 3 to 5 in recruiting. They're considered a powerhouse program right now, and rightfully so. I mean, I shouldn't use air quotes there. They are. They're a powerhouse program. They've dominated the Big Ten for the most part. Now, Michigan's gaining on them, obviously, but they've got a title. They've got multiple playoff appearances. They've got multiple championship game appearances, and they've produced a ton of NFL players. If you can go out and beat that team and look good doing it. Now, looking good doing it doesn't mean you have to win by 30. Look good doing it means even if you win by field goal, you played really well. And you outplayed them. It isn't a game where, Ohio State gave you 14 points because their quarterback just dropped the ball. You didn't really do anything. He just dropped the ball. You recovered at the 8-yard line. It's not like that. It's like if you're going to get the ball at the 8-yard line, it's because your edge rusher came screaming off the edge, beat their left tackle, had a strip sack, where you're playing well. So even if you only win 31-28, 31-27, 24-21, you watch that game, you're like, man, they played really well that game. Not like, Ohio State just laid an egg, and if you play them again in the postseason, they're going to kick your butt. Not like the Clemson game in 2020 where, yeah, you beat them in overtime and you look good doing it, but they were missing their starting quarterback, their 3 best defensive players. There's all these excuses. It's just got to be a game where you look back and you say, they were the better team that day. And that would be the biggest thing for Notre Dame. That would be the one that if you can then build on it by winning one of the next 2 over Clemson and USC, it really moves the needle. And if somehow you win all 3, that's the giant leap that Notre Dame takes from a perception standpoint. Even if they don't necessarily do even better in the postseason, you will have finally got some of those big wins off your back. Because I'll say this, as a program, Clemson is still ahead of Notre Dame right now. Because I still view the 18 championship and the 16 championship as mattering. They played in the 19 title game. They've put a lot of kids in the NFL. They've beaten Notre Dame in the 2 games that matter. Now, Notre Dame's beaten them the last 2 times in the regular season. Notre Dame is 2-1 against Clemson in the last 10 years in the regular season. They're 0-2 in the postseason. So you still need to get that postseason win. But if you can go down to Clemson this year, beat them at Clemson, and now you're 3-1 in your last 4 games against them, I think you can say you've surpassed them as a program, unless they go out and win a title still this year. So I think that's true. You can't say that about Ohio State, but it definitely closes the gap on the 2 programs from a perception standpoint. And so that's why I think those games are big. Now, to the second part, which of the other opponents poses the biggest challenge? I think the team that concerns me the most is probably, this is going to sound crazy to some of you, it's probably Duke. If I were to rank the next 4 that I'm concerned about, it would be Duke, NC State, Louisville, and Pitt. And the reason I say that is you get Pitt at home, and everybody talks about Pitt plays Notre Dame tough. They do, but Notre Dame still wins all those games. It's not like Pitt plays them tough and beats them. Pitt and Notre Dame play tough games, but Notre Dame always wins them. And so I'm just not as concerned about Pitt. I look at their team. It's a home game. I look at their team. They don't match up as well against Notre Dame as some of these other teams. Now, maybe Jurkovec could go out there and win, but like, look, Brian Kelly against Pitt was 6-1. And the only year they lost was the 2013 loss in the game where I think they got completely screwed and choked away the second half. And, your last two games, two of your last three wins weren't even competitive. I mean, in 2020, they absolutely wiped them floor with Pitt. And in 2015, it was 42-30, but it wasn't that close. Pitt scored the last like 2 touchdowns. It was a blowout. So I'm just not as worried about Pitt. Duke, the reason Duke concerns me is this, and it's all for different reasons. Duke concerns me because I think Mike Elko is a phenomenal coach. I do. And I didn't know what kind of head coach he would be just because you never know until a guy does it. I think he did a great job his first year at Duke. Took a 3-9 team and they won 9 games. And they were close to winning a couple others. They played Kansas tough. They should have beat Georgia Tech. They've got a quarterback that can make a lot of plays, can make plays with his legs. They've got skill on the perimeter. If Notre Dame can't dominate the trenches, Duke becomes a concern for me. I always get concerned about a team that has a quarterback that can make a lot of plays. And Riley Leonard's only going to get better, in my opinion. So they're the number one concern. Plus, the placement of that game, it's a week after Ohio State. So let's say that Notre Dame does beat Ohio State. It's going to be hard for them to match that level of intensity the next week when they head down to Durham to play Duke. It is. And so for me, my hope and my prayer is that when you look at Notre Dame's opponents this year, your hope is that those teams win early. And when you look at like Duke, for example, their schedule is they play Clemson in the opener, then they play Lafayette, then they play Northwestern. I have no idea when my voice is cracked. Then they play UConn. So the hope is that even if they lose to Clemson, that they're still 3-1. If they're 3-1 coming into that Notre Dame game, Notre Dame's going to have to take them seriously to a degree. And if they play Clemson tough, perfect world, they play Clemson tough. I don't want them to beat Clemson because I want Clemson to be ranked really high when Notre Dame plays them in November. When they play Clemson or play Clemson tough, then win your next 3 games and you're 3-1 against them. That's my hope for that game. And then the next game to me is I look at NC State's number 2. Reason why I love Tony Gibson as a defensive coordinator. He does I would never hire him at Notre Dame because I personally don't like that style. I think he's great at doing it. I think he's got some talent on defense to work with. It's a really odd kind of blitz all over scheme. They don't, well, I shouldn't say blitz because they don't bring like a bunch of overloads, but they'll bring guys from all over. It's a 3-3 type of defense. They've got some athletes to work with. And he's had some success against Sam Hartman in the last couple of years. So they beat Wake Forest last year in 2021, sort of like convincingly. The year before, Sam Hartman had some success against Wake Forest in 2021, a game that they won 45-42. This year against Wake Forest, Sam went 29 of 48 for 397 yards, but he threw 3 picks because, again, he does a lot of different things. One of them was just he dropped the guy right underneath, and Sam just didn't see it. In 2021, Sam had made some big plays. They won the game 45-42, but again, 290 yards and 3 picks. And so you look at it and say, boy, he hasn't had great success against them. So there's that. Now, of course, he'll have better talent around him. That concerns me a little bit. Louisville with Jeff Brom, they're going to have athletes. I don't know how good they're going to be a quarterback. That's right sandwiched in between Ohio State and USC. So I'm not sure how that's going to be. And then Pitt. Somebody in the chat said that Pitt's better than Duke. Agree to disagree. Pitt beat Duke last year by 2 points at Pitt. And Duke has almost everybody coming back this year. So I don't agree that Pitt's better than Duke. But here's the point. Even if they are, that doesn't matter. Football is a game of matchups. How do we match up against you? And Notre Dame for years, including last year, has had issues with mobile quarterbacks. And Riley Leonard is a mobile quarterback. And the recipe for upsetting a team like Notre Dame, if they're actually good, is can you score? Like when Pitt beat Clemson in 2016. That was a Pitt team that could score. And I don't view this Pitt team as being like that. We've seen Notre Dame go against this offense before in 2020. And Cignetti's team in 2020 was not able to really do a lot against Notre Dame. And some of the plays they did make that year were just Phil Jurkovec making just crazy plays. Notre Dame largely shut them down in that game. And then they got some yards late. It was a pretty blowout win, and I think this Notre Dame team has more talent than that team did. So we've seen them thrive. We've seen them thrive against that offense. We'll see what Pitt's defense is going to be this year. They had some big losses on defense this past season, so I just don't think they're going to be better than Duke. But even if they are, it's about the matchup, and I'm much more concerned about what Riley Leonard and that offense brings to the table than what we're going to see from Pitt. Even if Phil Dracovic is good, it's just schematically not a scheme that I think gives Notre Dame the same type of matchup problems that you're going to face when you face BC in 2020 with Zay Flowers and those kind of guys. Those are a really good receiving core at BC that year. And with what Duke has, Duke's got some really good athletes coming back, in my opinion. And they're going into year 2 of Mike Elko's tenure, not year 1. So I think that's going to help them as well. So we'll see how it all plays out. That's going to do it for today's show, everybody. I want to thank everybody very, very much for your being with us today, joining us here on this good day, big day for Notre Dame, right? Kid Nate Roberts in the class, another second now 2025 kid joins Davion Dixon in the class. Big pickup for Notre Dame, huge pickup for Jared Parker, who had a big role in this. Before you go, folks, do me a little solid. Hit that like button for us. I would appreciate that very, very much. And if you could, join the message board. We got a lot of conversation going on. Would love to have more of you on there. If you're not someone who likes to be on a message board, but you want to support Irish Breakdown, you can still sign up. There's no mandatory you have to be on X amount of times. You can still sign up to support us. We would greatly appreciate that as well. But we'd also enjoy the conversation. And it's a fun board. So I would love to see you all sign up. And I was going to joke with you making a Father's Day present, but I'm not a father. I'm a dog dad, I guess you could say that. So you could sign up and wish me a happy doggy Father's Day, I guess, for that one as well. I'm just giving you a hard time. But anyway, appreciate y'all being with us so much. Have a great rest of your Saturday. I got a fun day planned. I'm looking forward to it. Y'all stay safe. For you fathers out there, again, happy Father's Day. Enjoy your day tomorrow. We appreciate y'all very, very much. And we'll talk to you again very soon on the Irish Breakdown Podcast.